Okay, so I have 1 o'clock. But I think we're missing. A few people. So I guess we'll give a few minutes to let the rest of the board show up.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Michael. I think we're waiting on Mark, Lisa, Ed, Karen. What else am I missing? I think that's it.
Great.
I think Ed's going to be a little late, right?
That's fine. And Ellen, is Eleanor here yet? Let's see her. Okay, we'll wait a couple minutes. Amy Baxter. Can you unmute for a minute?
Yes,
Amy, you're here for the Reed's Way.
if needed. If
You may want to sign back in later because that's going to be our last one.
Okay.
Maybe Eleanor's just coming on now. I don't know if she has the ability to email you or text you to let you know when that's coming up.
Who? What?
For Amy Baxter's on now, and I was just saying she may want to.
Okay. I can do other things, and I'll just stick this on. That's fine.
Okay, whatever. I
Thank
just
you.
didn't want to have you spending your whole afternoon if you don't.
I
Okay.
appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so I see Eleanor's on and Lisa. I see Karen. Are we missing? Is Mark Poor on?
Can you hear me, Susan?
Yes.
Okay, he just emailed me. He doesn't have the link, even though I did send it to him a couple times, so I just sent it to him again.
Okay, we can probably start then. Do you think?
Yeah, where's Ed? He was gonna come.
I think Michael said, or someone said he was going to be late. That's fine.
Oh, okay. So we have Jeff, Jim, you.
I think everybody's here.
Okay. So yeah, I would just say anybody who is here for the last hearing, you might want to just watch on YouTube and come. You can log off and come log back on later if you want.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Okay, so I'm going to get us started. So as a preliminary matter, my name is Susan McCarthy. I'm the chair of the Nantucket Zoning Board of Appeals. Permit me to confirm that all the members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Lisa Botticelli.
Aye.
Michael O'Mara. Michael, you need to unmute, I think.
I beg your pardon. Aye.
Okay. Kiram Kosayatek.
Here.
Jeff Thayer.
Aye.
Jim Mondani.
Here.
Okay. And then Ed and Mark are going to be joining us in a little bit. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Eleanor Antonietti.
Here.
Marcus Silverstein. Marcus,
Mark is muted. He's muted.
Marcus, can you unmute?
He's here for something that's happening
Later.
Okay.
Okay. And Paul Murphy, I think, was going to sign in later too, right? For the last one?
Yes.
Okay. Anticipated.
Madam
Yes.
Chair, if I may.
Who am I
Please be a little
speaking with?
patient. I'm actually on concurrent Zoom meetings at this moment, so
I'm
but I'm
sorry.
keeping track.
Who am I speaking?
Marcus
Oh, is
Sylvia.
that Marcus? Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I'm a little slow, it's because I'm running 2 meetings.
Okay. All right. Thanks for letting me know. Thanks, Marcus. Okay, so anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. Please note, some of these people may not be logged in at this time, and they may log on later, and there may be others who log on later who are not on this list. Brian Swain for Satcham's Path 40B 17 Waposset Circle.
Here.
Peter Ahern, owner applicant 17 Waposset Circle.
Here.
Jay Maroney, attorney for application numbers 21-20 and 22-20.
Here.
Elizabeth O'Rourke, landscape architect for application number 22-20. Kate Sale, appellant for application number 23-20. Marianne Hanley, attorney for application number 24-20. Linda Yates, owner applicant of 21 Derrymore. Okay. Dan Bailey, attorney for application number 20-20. Danielle De Benedictis, co-counsel for application number 20-20. Peter Kyberg, attorney for owner 1 and 3 Reeds Way.
Here.
Michael Reed, owner 1 and 3 Reeds Way. Drew and Jessica Guff, co-appellant in application number 20-20. Edward and Marilyn Gregory, co-appellant in application number 20-20.
Here.
Tracy B. Flannery, co-appellant in application number 20-20. Okay, so if everyone could mute themselves again until it's their turn.
Madam Chair, sorry, this is Alex Wysite from KP Law here, Town Council. I
Okay.
just want to introduce myself, let you know that I'm available for the Reeds Way.
Okay, all right, great. Sorry, I didn't have you on the list, but I knew you were going to be here, so
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
that's good. Thank
He's
you.
on, he's just under staff. He's on there, unless you don't have the
Oh.
most recent one.
Oh, you know what? I don't have him on this one, and so I guess I did see you sent in an
Updated.
updated one, but I guess I didn't print that one, so
Okay,
I
no worries.
apologize.
No worries.
Okay. Was that the only change to it?
I think there might have been one other person who wanted to be part of the Reed's Way thing, but
Sorry.
it's okay. He's not here anyway, the person I'm thinking of, so.
Okay. Okay, sorry, I hadn't looked at my email again when you sent that. Okay. So good afternoon. This open meeting of the Nantucket Zoning Board of Appeals is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberation of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Nantucket Zoning Board of Appeals is convening by video conference via the Zoom app as posted on the town's website identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recordings. Please be sure to properly leave the meeting when your matter is finished being discussed or upon final adjournment. All supporting materials have been provided. All supporting materials that have been provided to the members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. So we will now be turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I think that will be especially important. This coming up will be especially important, and maybe I'll go back over it when we have the last item on the agenda, since there are going to be a high number of participants. So I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until I yield the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in conversation with other members, please try to do so through me, and take care to identify yourself for the minutes. For the items that will have public comment, after the members have spoken, I will afford public comment as follows. Staff will activate the chat feature on YouTube, and members of the public who have comments or questions can use this feature to communicate with the public body. Instructions are on the town's website. So myself or staff will do our best to address the questions and comments that you all have. And finally, each vote in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. Okay, so that's the housekeeping. So moving on, so this will call to order the regularly scheduled October 15th, 2020 meeting of the Town of Nantucket Zoning Board of Appeals. Our first matter of business is to approve the agenda. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the agenda as written?
So moved.
Okay, would someone second?
Second.
Okay, so the motion's been made and seconded, so I'm just gonna do roll call down the list. All those in, so Lisa Botticelli,
Aye.
Michael O'Mara,
Aye.
Karen Kosei Attack,
Aye.
Jeff Thayer,
Aye.
okay, and myself, aye.
Mark is logged on. I think he's trying to connect to audio, but Mark is
Okay.
attempting to log on now.
Okay. The next we'll move on to the approval of the
I'm on the
minutes.
phone, sorry.
Okay. Mark, is that you?
No, Marcus, that was Marcus. I was
Oh.
talking about Mark Poor. Marcus, I was talking about Mark Poor, not you.
Okay. Okay, so the minutes, to vote to approve the minutes. So the August 13th minutes, they looked okay to me, except for the one thing that I'd asked you change with Terry has changed, and I've seen the draft of it. And so I have no problem with the August 13th minutes. Did anyone else on the board have, I think I was the only one who had an issue with it last time, but does anyone on the board have any comments about the August 13th minutes? Okay, so if not, would someone make, would someone make a motion to approve the August 13th?
I will do that. I will put a motion in.
Okay, would someone second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so again, I'm just gonna go down the list. Lisa Botticelli,
Aye.
Michael O'Mara,
Aye.
Karen Kosayatek,
Aye.
Jeff Thayer,
Aye.
and myself, aye. Okay, so the September 10th minutes, I did have, so the September 10th minutes under new business, 18-20, the 6 and 8 Trotters Lane. Under my, it looks like it's the first comment that's noted. The second sentence, the first says she can't think of unintended consequences. I think what was meant to be written there was there may be unintended consequences.
Could you repeat, because I could not get those, Terry was off away. So when
Yeah.
I went and made my corrections, the reason the minutes in the packet have all my markings on them is because Terry hasn't incorporated them because she was
Okay.
off. So
Okay.
could you go back to exactly where you are so we can get it really clear?
So on page 2 of 3 or page 11 in the packet,
Right?
number 1, application 18-20, it was Tim Severino's 6 and 8 Trotters Lane.
Yes.
Under public discussion, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think 7 like people down. It's the first time that I'm quoted. The second sentence says she can't think of unintended consequences. But it's meant to say there may be unintended consequences.
Yeah, I was not there for that part, as you may remember, so I didn't have any idea. Repeat that, there may be?
There may be unintended consequences.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
That makes more sense. Okay.
Got it.
So that was my only comment on those. Did anyone else have any comments on the September minutes?
No.
No. Okay. All right. So then does someone want to, so I guess we'll hold those till next month.
No, I think you can, unfortunately, Terry's not here.
I mean, we can approve them if you make that one change because
Yes, we can. I think we can do that because
Okay.
even though Terry doesn't log on to the Zoom, but she is watching by YouTube, or she eventually watches by YouTube. So
So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended by Susan.
yes, got it.
anyone want a second?
Second.
Okay. So again, I'll just do roll call. Lisa Botticelli,
Aye.
Michael O'Mara,
Aye.
Karen Kosayatek,
Aye.
Jeff Thayer,
Aye.
and myself, aye. Okay.
I just want to quickly say, Mark is. I continue to see him connecting to audio, and somehow it's not working.
Okay.
And we don't even have video with him. So, Mark, I'm going to say to you, even though I can't see you, maybe you want to log off and try logging on again. That sometimes works.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we can move on to old business. I'm going to recuse myself from this one, and Lisa's going to chair this one.
Okay, so let me just get my stuff together. Sorry, guys. This is, oops, hold on. I lost my front page. Susan, can you just introduce the application number since I lost the front page of it?
Sure. So this one is
7611.
076-11, Peter Ahern and Jesse Ray Govin. 17 Waposset Circle, represented by attorney Brian Swain.
Okay, Brian, did you want to make your presentation?
Sure. Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman. For the record, Brian Swain, attorney for the applicants, Peter Ahern and Jesse Govin. They're here and present. They're the owners of 17 Waposset, and this particular application is a request for a determination that the applicant's proposed installation of a residential swimming pool, a storage shed, and hardscaping is an insubstantial modification to the Satcham's Path comprehensive permit and plans recorded therewith. And specifically, as you can see on the proposed conditions plan, the siting of the pool is in the backyard. It's 12 feet by 28 feet in length. There's going to be a storage shed where some of the pool equipment will be housed. They'd like to do a bluestone border around the pool and have some decking for the remaining area that's improved with hardscaping. They've already brought this to the Satcham Path Homeowners Association, and they've received approval for it. So what the board's role in this situation under 760 CMR 56074 is to make a determination whether or not this proposed application is a substantial or insubstantial modification to the comprehensive permit. And what the CMR has defined as substantial changes is generally improvements that extend the 40B by 10%, such as the bedroom count, the area of a primary structure, and what it defines insubstantial changes as are number of bedrooms that are less than 10% of the total project, changing the building materials, financing programs, and also bedroom counts that are less than 10% of an entire development. And, this request, it's an insubstantial modification because really what they're doing is improving landscaping. They're not touching the building structure itself. They're doing hardscaping. And those are really administrative factors that are consistent with the insubstantial changes that are spelled out for in the CMR. And this board has done and approved a pool in another 40B in the Beach Plum Village. So therefore, we'd ask that you make a determination that this is a insubstantial modification to the comprehensive permits and allow them to make the improvements. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. And if I can't, the applicants are here to answer them as well.
Madam Chair, I'm very sorry to interrupt, but I have to ask the NCTV person something, and this has nothing to do with this matter. Whoever it is who is the NCTV person, can you please make me the co-host so I can help let people in? I'm getting communications from people who want to be let in. Thank you. Okay, I'm muting. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. Okay, thank you very much, Brian. Are we pulling anything up on the screen? Do we need to look at anything? Does anybody have any questions, comments? Looks like you've been through the HGC for the application.
Not yet. They've been through the homeowners association, but not the HDC. So that's another municipal permit they'd have to obtain.
Oh, okay. The plan says HGC plan, so I just made the assumption you had gone through. Okay. How does everybody feel about this being substantial or insubstantial?
Well, given that we already did one of these, I really don't have any issues with this.
Okay.
I have one question.
Sure, Michael, go ahead.
I assume that the contiguous abutters are in favor of this application?
There are no letters in the file, I don't believe, Eleanor, are there?
I believe the
No, there are not, but this isn't noticed.
Yeah,
So
it's not noticed.
I would hope that I don't know if Mr. Ahern and Ms. Govan approached their neighbors.
you can go.
Could we hear from the homeowners?
Hi.
Yeah, just identify yourself, please.
Sure. Peter Ahern, for the record. You guys can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we've verbally talked to our neighbors, but no, we have not gotten letters from them yet. They have approved, but no, I haven't, like I said, I haven't physically gotten the letters yet to send to you guys, but they're writing them and they said it's not an issue with them, but I guess I need to get that to you as well. Yeah, it's the first time going through this process, so I'm a little unaware of every step, but so that's what I can tell you at the moment.
Okay.
I think by virtue of the fact that they didn't write a letter against it, I would consider that their approval of the pool.
It was HOA approved.
Yeah.
And what is that process involved? I assume there's notice in that process. Is that right? Or
You want me to speak?
Please.
Sure.
Well, we reached out to them first. That was the first, group we reached out to, was the homeowner association, thinking if we got to them first and they approved, then maybe we could go forward with this. So we wrote them a letter, and they had a couple questions for us, and they wrote us back with the approval. That's the best I can tell you. I think the letter's there. But so yeah, that was our first step.
Right. You don't know what their process is necessarily, though.
Not necessarily. I'm just assuming how it would work. you know, they have a meeting every month. I think it's every month or every 2 weeks. There's a, you know, homeowners association meeting, and they go over the, kind of like you guys do, the record, what we're going to talk about. And that came up, and I'm assuming as a group, they vote on it and say yes or no.
Yeah, I'm with Karen. I'm satisfied. We've done it before, and I'm satisfied with the HOA approval. You know, that to me is, you know, the owners agreeing to it.
Okay, and it looks like, I think we're only going to be the four of us because Mark still isn't on, correct?
No, he's not disconnected and reconnected, so I don't know. I've been emailing him to do that. I don't know what's going on.
Okay,
Sorry.
but we're okay to do this as a 4-member board.
As long as, yeah, it's, you need 4 votes, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm going to vote for it if anyone wants to canvass the board.
Well, it sounds like, oh, actually, there's 5 of us. I'm not counting myself. It sounds like everybody's in favor of it being an unsubstantial change.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so the motion would be, sorry, Madam Chair, the motion would be to confirm that it is insubstantial and authorizing you, because you're the acting chair, to sign a memo memorializing this decision.
Okay.
I'll make that motion. You're looking for one, Lisa?
That'd be great. Thank you, Karen. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor by roll call. I'll do Jeff.
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Michael.
Aye.
And myself, aye. Thank you.
very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next item. So our next item on the agenda is a request to continue to December 10th, 2020.
No, that's all set. That's actually been voted.
Oh.
Yeah,
Did you guys-
it was continued. It says continued.
Oh, okay, sorry. I was confused because I saw the action deadline was September 10th.
No, I have that extended. I just didn't update that. That's
Okay, all right. I had made a note to make a question about that. Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
moving on. New business, application 21-20, Vandalay Realty LLC owner and Lawrence M. Murray applicant, Jay Maroney is presenting, and this is for 84 Polpis Road.
Yeah, good afternoon, Madam Chair. My name is, for the record, Jay Maroney, and I am representing the applicant, Larry Morey, and the owner of Vandalay Realty LLC. What we're looking to do is preserve the ground cover ratio on the lot. The premises was previously zoned Lug 1 when the house was constructed back in 1980, and has since been rezoned to Lug 3. The change in the ground cover ratio of the available for the lots was Lug 1 allows for a 7% ground cover ratio, while Lug 3 only allows 3% maximum. The current existing ground cover on the house is approximately 6%. And what we'd like to do is demolish that structure and replace it with another structure or structures of similar ground cover ratio as is currently on the lot. We feel that that's not detrimental to the neighborhood and therefore fits within 139-33 TAC A4. Thank you.
So looking at the conditions of 139-33A4, it seems to me that you guys meet those conditions, but I'm going to canvass the board to see if anyone has any questions or concerns. Lisa, did you have any questions on this one?
I don't think so. The 3,600 square feet ground coverage does not include the shed because that's proposed as a zoning shed. Is that correct? Or does it include the shed? The pool cabana, excuse me.
Yeah, it's being rolled in, yes, because the HCC proposal has a slightly reduced size of the house at 336 square feet on the ground. And then the additional for the pool cabana gets us back up to approximately where we are currently, though it is a slight reduction in the ground cover that we're asking for.
Jay, I'm just going to clarify for you. I think what you meant to say was that the proposed dwelling is going to be 3,460 square feet and the pool cabana is 140 square feet. So those together give you the total ground cover of 3,600, which is the net decrease of 88. And that's what gets you from 6 to 5.97 or 5.8, right?
Well, I think our HCC actual application had the house even smaller than what we had when we applied, put in the ZBA application.
Okay.
And I know that it's been to HCC, it's been approved, but we don't have the certificate of appropriateness yet. So we don't want to we prefer not to lock in ground cover in your decision, but just retain what we have or less, which is where we fully expect to be.
100 then, based on the site plan, or are we?
I guess not, if that's what you're asking, Jay. Is that?
Well, we put in the application, we don't actually we didn't put a number in the application because it's still a little bit in flux as it goes through HTC, since we don't have a final approved certificate of appropriateness yet back. Though it's been to HTC, it's been approved, it just hasn't been issued yet. So we don't have the exact numbers.
Okay.
Okay, so it's just gonna
but we'll be less.
Okay. It's just, okay.
So by the standard, we still feel like we meet the standard because, as you pointed out, we're not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing non-conforming structure and our use, since we will be less.
So our decision, you're asking for us to bless the 5.97 ground cover or less.
Correct.
Or maximum of 5.97.
Correct.
Okay. So Lisa, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Michael, did you have any questions on this one?
No.
Okay. Jeff, do you have any questions on this one?
I do not, Susan. We've granted this kind of relief a few times fairly recently, and I don't have any issue with this application.
And Jim, do you have any concerns or questions about this one?
No, I don't.
Okay. Okay. I don't either. I believe you meet all three provisions of 139.33A4. So confirming, Eleanor, since the staff report came out, you haven't had any additional mail from abutters or anyone?
No, nothing.
Okay. So would someone care to make a motion to approve the relief requested, allowing them to retain the current ground cover comprising of 5.97% or less with the new structure?
I would make that motion.
Okay. And a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. So again, I'll just go down roll call. Lisa Botticelli?
Aye.
Michael O'Mara?
Aye.
Karam Kosayatak?
Aye.
Jeff Thayer?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Okay. All right, so that motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay. So next we move on to application 22-20. This is 22 Starbuck Road LLC. Property is 22 Starbuck Road, and representing is Jay Maroney again.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Let's hope I'm on a roll here. My name, for the record, is Jay Maroney, representing the applicant, and we're applying for a pool in the village residential zoning district which requires a minimum lot size of 20,000 square feet. The locus is dimensionally conforming to frontage and setbacks. Currently, the house has now been demolished, but what we're looking for is to be able to site a pool on the lot with the new construction, according to 139 Tech 2 for the zoning bylaw. In order to have a residential swimming pool in the VR district, we need to meet the minimum lot size for the district, which we do, and side and rear setbacks have to be 20 feet for the pool and mechanical equipment. We've also noted in our application that there are a number of conditions that we traditionally grant, and none of those pose an issue for us. We're happy to comply with the traditional restrictions. Any of your questions?
I'm going to go through the list and see what everyone has to say. I'm going to start with you again, Lisa. Do you have any questions or comments about this application?
I just have just one question. What was updated on the newest site plan that we just got in our view packet in our staff report today?
That was just, I had asked them to put the pool on there because the proposed, which shows the new dwelling, didn't show the pool. So I went back and asked Paul Santos to put the pool in so you could see.
Oh, I guess I'm looking at Elizabeth's plan that shows the pool. But
it doesn't show specific setbacks. So Paul's plan does show specific setback distance.
Got it. Okay.
And so that plan confirms that the pool equipment is outside the 20-foot setback and the pool. And then Eleanor, I saw you noted in the staff report a question about the pergola and the hardscaping, but those are both, it doesn't seem to me from the bylaw that those need to be in the 20-foot setback.
No, I just was drawing it to your attention. I mean,
they're
in the
both
beginning with pools, you guys had a lot of discussion about the coping and all the different aspects of the pool and the hardscaping. And I think where we ended up was, it was the outside edge of the coping from which you measured. I remember Michael being very specific about it in our first couple of applications. I wasn't saying that this needs to be outside the setback. I'm just pointing it out.
I'm going to go back to polling the board, but I just wanted to make sure that whatever we do, we're consistent with the conditions that we've put on in the past about lighting and noise and soundproofing and screening and all of that. So, and when we get to the public comment or the abutters, I feel like the letter we got from the abutter that was included, or maybe it was just emailed, he went through those, really hit those conditions that we usually apply.
He's not actually an abutter. He lives further away, but he is someone who's consistently concerned with pools in Nantucket.
Okay. Well,
nonetheless.
Huh? Nonetheless, he hit all the highlights. So, okay. So Lisa, does that?
Yeah,
does
that answers my question.
What was that?
It said, I don't have any more questions. I agree that we have to have those conditions that we generally put in listed out. I was wondering if there was a copy of them someplace.
I can read them too if you'd like.
Yeah, I actually sent them to Attorney Maroney, and I think he included them in his addendum.
I believe I did. I have them right here if you want me to list them, Lisa. There's 9 of them.
Yeah, no, I have them right here. They're on page, they start on page 109.
Okay.
So I would just, I agree with Lisa, and I'm sure everyone, we would like to have the consistent, and I'm glad that Eleanor, that you sent those to Jay ahead of time. Okay. Michael, Lisa, does that do it for you?
Other questions?
Okay.
I assume there was nothing else from any other abutters or abutters to abutters?
There wasn't anything else, right, Eleanor? Just that one?
No, I didn't get any other letters for that. Nope.
Okay.
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
There was in that letter that we received this morning, there was a mention of pool equipment should be in a sound reducing enclosure. Did we ever do that in the past? I don't even remember.
I thought we did.
It's shown on the side of the house, on the plan on page. On
This is
Elizabeth's
Elizabeth
plan.
O'Rourke. If I can speak to that, we did the illustrative fence enclosure, but in the past you did the 20-foot requirement was, I think, burden enough. But we did illustrate a fence around the pool equipment.
Oh, I don't see that on this plan, or maybe it's too small and I can't see it.
It's on, probably on Elizabeth's plan.
Page 114.
Yeah, page 114. You see the
If you
fence.
zoom in, it's hard to see, but if you zoom in, she has pool equipment enclosure.
Okay.
AC unit location to on the, what is that?
Yeah.
West elevation of the house, I think.
Yeah, I see. So I would just like for the soundproofing, I feel like that sounds familiar that we had done that before, but I guess we can look back to other decisions. And if we say that the conditions are consistent with our prior decisions in the VR district, then if that's one of them, then that is included.
That makes sense.
But it definitely having it enclosed. So, so then condition 9 that Attorney Maroney put in here, all mechanical equipment associated with the pool shall be located on the southwestern side of the proposed structure as shown in the attached plan. We'd just like to.
Well, we should, at a minimum, it should be screened per the landscape plan.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, as not only just as shown, but as, you know, with the enclosure, something about the enclosure.
And then we can verify our other decisions to make sure we hadn't included soundproofing on any other decisions.
Right. And then the one that oh wait, here it is on the other side, the chemical treatment. Okay. And I would just want to make sure that the other condition 1 about the removal of the water from the pool is consistent with what we've done in the past, because I know that that was in the early decisions, that was something we talked about a lot, about when the chemicals were going to stop, how the water was going to be taken out of the pool and disposed of. So, Karen, besides the, do you have any other comments besides bringing up the soundproofing, which was a good thing to bring up?
No, I'm pretty good.
Okay. So Jeff, what about you? Do you have any additional comments or questions about this application?
No, I think I'm okay with it.
Okay. Jim?
I'm okay with it.
Okay. And Eleanor's, did Mark Poor ever join us?
Mark is still connecting to audio. I don't know what's going on. It's just this buffering connecting to audio. I don't know.
Okay, well, I guess he would call in if he had, if he, I guess he could call in, right? Or some way like he could.
Yes, he could call in. I've emailed him a few times and that stuff has the call-in number, but I think I don't know. He can probably hear us, but don't forget to check with me about public comment.
I won't. I did before. Okay, so is there any public comment on this one?
Let me refresh. No, there is not.
Okay. So I'm just looking over Mr. Mandel's concerns. I think we've addressed all of them. The one thing when he was talking about the neighbors being able to see down into the pool with upside down houses. Jay, can you comment on the neighbors' proximity to the pool and any visibility?
Yeah, I believe there's a fair bit of screening between the properties. I know the house directly across the street also has a pool. So, I think that, and the way that the pool is facing on the, behind the house to the southeast, I think it screens from the nearest neighbor.
Yeah, it does look like on the plan, it does look like there's a bit of screening. Okay. So and it goes without saying, obviously, outdoor lighting and noise all have to comply with the local ordinances. Does anyone else have any other comments, any closing comments before I ask for a motion? Okay, well then would someone like to make a motion to grant the relief as requested with the conditions matching those that we have used or consistent with those that we have used on prior decisions?
So moved.
And a second?
I will second that.
Okay, so I will go down the roll call. Lisa Botticelli,
Aye.
Michael O'Mara,
Aye.
Karen Kosayatek,
Aye.
Jeff Thayer,
Aye.
and myself, aye. Okay, so we can move on from that one.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so this next one, Lisa, you're going to chair 2320.
Yep, this is application 2320, Jeffrey R. Sale and Catherine R. Sale, trustees of Tiger Tail Realty Trust. This is an appeal to a ruling that the zoning officer made on the property. Who would,
Kate.
who?
I'm here, Kate Sale.
Oh, okay, there you are, Kate. Thank you.
Zoom is my least favorite thing to look at myself on.
Yeah.
I'm ready when you guys are.
I think we're all set.
Okay. Again, Kate Sale, thank you for letting me do this. We received a notice from the zoning enforcement officer a few weeks ago about a special permit we have on a building that we own at 230 Acres Lane. We've had the special permit in place probably since 1995, since right before the wellhead recharge district was developed. I sent in a letter describing what our appeal was, or what our reasons for why we didn't agree with the zoning officer. I don't know if you want me to just read the whole thing, or if you guys have read it and you already know essentially what it is. But I tried to give a point-by-point response to each of the violations that he has alleged. So I don't know how you want me to proceed. I've never done this before, so.
I would just, quickly go through your letter, just.
Okay. So just to remind everybody, the special permit allows for the use of 2 of the garage bays at the building to be used for boat repair, auto detailing, auto repair and maintenance, painting, washing, cleaning, oil changes, all of that. And so for the past 20 years, the building has been used for those purposes. Recently, the most recent occupant was my husband, who had a harbor marine repair business. Out of the 2 bays, so the building has 3 bays, and the special permit allows that 2 of the bays are be able to use under this permit. Recently my husband closed his business, and he'd been operating out of it for about 20 years. And so instead of renting the 2 bays to someone who would be using it for auto repair or boat maintenance, we had divided the bay and rented 1/2 of it. So there are still, I guess my point is, the way that the violation reads, there has to be 2 garage bays used for this purpose. When I look at the special permit, it tells me that 2 of the garage bays can be used for this purpose, but 2 don't have to be used for this purpose. In other words, you can have 1, or you could have 2, or you could have none, or you can't have none, but I think you understand what I'm trying to say. So I disagree with the idea that we altered the use of it, A, because the use is already allowed in the special permit, and secondly, because it doesn't say that we have to use those 2 bays at all times. His other point was that there are some vehicles stored on the property that have been there for more than 48 hours, and the special permit doesn't allow for storage of vehicles more than 48 hours. My feeling is that the definition of storage is something that you guys might want to think about. To me, it's sort of something that I would put there with the intent to leave it there for a long time, possibly charge rent or some sort of storage fee. Whereas the vehicles that are on the property now and the boats that have been on the property before are all awaiting parts or are actively being worked on. So I wouldn't consider that they're being stored there. They're just there. I guess that would be sort of the other part of it that I disagree with. As far as insufficient screening, we're happy to do more. However, there's 2 or 3 very large hedges that are already in place there, pretty mature, up to, I think, 8 feet tall, that are already blocking most of the outside area of materials. So if there's something else that you would like me to do more of, we'd be happy to do that. But I guess I disagree with the idea that there's no screening, or at least insufficient.
Did you provide any pictures of the screening? I didn't make it over there to take a peek at the site.
I didn't provide any pictures of it. I can email you guys a picture that I took. We were thinking about selling it, and I have a picture of it that I can send you. The picture that's on the assessor's site is old, so it doesn't show how large the screening has gotten.
Okay. I don't know if you send it to Eleanor, if she wants to, if anybody else wants to see it, if we want to pull it up on the screen.
Okay.
And if you email it to me, I can share it on the screen.
Okay.
And just interrupting this hearing for one moment. In the waiting room is an iPhone. I need to know who it is before I admit them. So whoever you are, you need to email me who you are before I admit you, please. So I can name who you are.
Oh, that's my phone.
It is?
Eleanor, that's my phone. Yes, Marcus.
Okay. I don't think so. Okay. Thanks. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, Kate, are you finished?
No, I'm just trying to do 2 things at once, get you the picture and just make sure that I covered everything.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah, I guess that's essentially it. It seemed like a lot more in my head and when I wrote down my notes, but I think I explained it all in the appeal letter.
Okay.
I'll email the picture to Eleanor right now.
Okay. In the meantime, Marcus, would you like to say something in response?
Yes, thank you, Marcus Silverstein, zoning officer. I agree the special permit does not say they have to use the bays for all the bays for these uses. What has happened, however, is one of the bays no longer in use is being used by an arguable home occupation, possibly commercial. I didn't include it in the enforcement office because I didn't know it complies with home occupation. So what they have done, though, is one of the bays now is being used by, I guess, one of the owners of one of the condos for a physical fitness type operation there. You can see it. It's the one with the tent in front of the bays. That tent in the bay, in front of the bays, is too small for. It's neither covered under building or zoning. It's got to be about 100 square feet or so, 10 by 10 or 8 by 8 maybe. Anyway, so they have that use going in one of the bays, which is not covered in the special permit. Furthermore, you've got an impact on parking, arguably by the tent. that was also put in place. That use was installed without permits. What else? Oh, and moreover, as you can see, particularly in the 8/20, the August 20th photos, they may not be required to use the bays for the work, but I don't believe a special permit allows them to be doing work outside of the building. As you see, at least one Dodge Ram up on Jack. I think some indication, possible oil changes outside, but it also might just have been leaky vehicles and whatnot. So essentially, they've changed the conditions of the special permit without coming to you, is what the first bit is. Second bit, again, the storage of vehicles. I don't think that the board in 95, 96 thought this was going to be, a vehicle storage place. It was for work. And I think I'm interpreting that clause sufficiently that basically vehicles are supposed to be on the property and out as quickly as possible. And finally, insufficient screening. I mean, the vacant area of the lot is screened, but obviously the front and everywhere else where vehicles are stored or not, that's obviously up to you all whether that's sufficient screening or not. So essentially it comes down to the terms of the special permit have been altered. There's work going on outside of the structure. There may be parking concern, an additional, hold on a second. An additional use is now being made of the property. Whether or not that qualifies as a home occupation, I don't know. They've not applied for it. And the screening. And if you have any questions.
Okay, great, thank you.
I have the photos if you want me to share.
Sure, or let's see if let's pull the board first and see. I mean, I have a couple questions. How many vehicles, Marcus, would you say are stored on the site? It's really hard to get a sense of.
Oh, I didn't approach it in that way. We could count them from most are coming in, having whatever work done and going. Maybe about 8 or 9, maybe or so vehicles. I can count them up if you want. Are the ones that were indicated there for more than 48 hours, and a few of them for a month or so.
Okay. Just curious, it's hard to tell. It looks like a lot of cars, but I know that there are duplicates in lots of directions.
Yeah.
Okay, does any of the board members have any questions? Comments? Jim, I'm going to start with you.
Marcus, I just have a question. I know this probably came about because of a complaint, but in the past, I know when it was a boat used for boat repair, boats were outside of it all the time, not necessarily in the garage. And in your view, would that have violated the special permit?
Yes, on all counts. This was only kicked off by a complaint I'd received, which was really zeroed in on the tent, the addition of the tent, which led the complainant to believe that work was going on underneath that. And in fact, that's where the kid has his bench press, or had it the day I saw into it. Yeah, if you look at the aerials, it was all boat storage. And had somebody complained about it, then they probably would have been in violation of that condition. And
Okay,
maybe it's that condition you all want to look at.
Well, that's what I was getting at, because I know it's been used, to my personal knowledge, for a long time. And if that was acceptable, then I guess I would lean more to allowing what's currently done there now. But you're saying that probably wasn't acceptable then.
Well,
As a
if you
boat-
read,
Correct.
boat repair outside in the parking lot.
yeah.
Well, I mean, mostly again, you look at the aerials and it's all wrapped boats just kind of everywhere, assuming that they stayed there most of the winter.
Well,
But I would also note that sort of, besides the fact that everybody was simply used to the property being used as it was, violation of the condition or not, it wouldn't have triggered any complaints either. It's very low key, just having boats sit around.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, the way the decision is written, it specifically says application seeking modification of Board of Appeals decision 013-95, in which a special permit was granted under zoning bylaw section 139-9B2G to allow for use of a structure for the storage, repair, washing, painting, and other servicing of motor vehicles.
I'm sorry to interrupt. There's somebody's noise reverberating back.
It's
making it hard.
Marcus. I fixed it. I muted him. So Marcus,
Okay.
you're gonna need to unmute if you want to speak, but there's too much background noise at your other meeting. So I've muted you.
Thank you.
Applicants are granted relief to operate primarily a vehicle detailing service in a structure that would contain 2 apartments on the 2nd floor and 2 garage bay units on the 1st floor. So it feels like it was contemplated to be interior use.
I may just add that in the spirit of the time when it was happening, and Michael was there, so he can attest to this. I don't know that language necessarily was to maintain that it be in the structure, but that it was the structure that it was being proposed for. But again, I wasn't at the meeting. I just know that there was a lot of back and forth between my father's trying to do what the town wanted there, to the point where he went back even after being granted this special permit that allowed for the entire 30-acre subdivision to have this special permit power. And he went back and said, no, we only really need it for just this one lot. So we reduced the impact that could have been potential for the entire subdivision. But just afterwards, and when you guys have a chance to talk, I just want to add a couple of points to Marcus's comments.
Michael, do you have any recollection or any thoughts about that?
I don't have, I know that, you know, at one time, this was a nightclub.
Yep.
And that was probably 30, 35 years ago. I don't have any strong recollection about this application. I do have a question for Marcus, though.
Okay.
And that is the main problem here that this is an unreasonable expansion of a permitted use?
No, simply an alteration of the special permit without relief.
Could you repeat that, Marcus?
And I'd say just simply an alteration of the special permit without relief. I think what you're touching on more is pre-existing non-conforming uses.
Well, I guess I'm not sure that I have not seen the site recently, which I apologize for, and I am willing to go view. I'm wondering if the main complaint here from the neighbors isn't the number of vehicles and boats parked on the property currently.
That was, that's part of it. Like I said, the original complaint was concern of the tenant that had gone in for the physical fitness thing. The motor vehicle repair was expanding out of the building. That triggered review of the special permit and conditions which led to all this, basically.
Thank you.
Okay. Kiram, any comments?
Not really. Just probably parking and vehicles being worked on outside. Just some of the pictures looked kind of disturbing with whatever those leaks are, but that's just me.
Okay. Jeff, did we hear from you?
Kate, what is happening there? What is the story with all those vehicles? Are they all actively being worked on? Are some being stored there? It looks
I'm
kind of
glad you
messy.
asked. I'm glad you asked because it does look bad. So when my husband decided to shut down his business and we decided to rent to this guy, he didn't understand Nantucket very well, and nor did any of his Range Rover owners who decided to drop their cars off all the time without permission or without an appointment. So it's taken us a year or two to work out the kinks in terms of not having people just drop things off without his knowing about it or without having an appointment. But I've asked him several times, are these cars cannot be stored here. So you better make sure and tell me whether or not they're being stored or whether you're actively working on these things. And I guess that's wherein I have a difference about the opinion of what storage means. They're sitting there waiting parts, or he's actively working on them. And so to me, that's not really storage. However, I have told him, you're not allowed to have more than 12 cars here or more than 10 cars here. I think when we signed up the lease, the original limit I set for him was 9. I'm trying to remember what I put in the lease, but I was very specific that you couldn't have just as many cars as you wanted to work on there. You had to limit yourself. That's since been cleaned up quite a bit. I think if anybody goes by and looks at it now, you'll find it looks much, much better. And he now fully gets that he has to be more compliant with what's going on there. So as far as that, it's just one guy who's working on Range Rovers out of a 1-bay garage. The concern that they had in the past was addressed in the original permit, where they were worried about cleanup and oil spills and all of that sort of stuff. Everything has to be, by Massachusetts law and obviously by Nantucket regulations, handled appropriately and environmentally appropriately as well. The other issue is that the building is on town water and town sewer, and that seemed to be a big relief factor when it came to worrying about whether or not these were actual real oil spills or there would be oil spills, because since it's not on town water, it's not as much of or it didn't seem to be bother the board as much back when the original permit was issued. So there's cleanup, the parking, and also, so 2 things. The tent, one of my tenants decided he wanted to open up a physical fitness gym. So I figured, okay, you can use this other bay that we're now not using. So he's operating, he lives in the building, he's operating out of there. The one thing that Marcus hasn't brought up that I wanted to remind you of is there are actually 3 garage bays on the property. And the 3rd garage bay, when we allowed the tenant to take over the unit as a gym, we then entered into an agreement with new tenants who are a landscaping business and are using the 3rd garage as storage and maintenance and repair of their landscaping equipment. So we're still using the permit the way it was intended to be used. I'm not sure why using it less impactfully is a problem, but it sounds like one of the problems is that instead of using 2 bays, we're only using 1. Again, I just disagree with the spirit of the permit versus what the zoning enforcement officer thinks.
Well, I'd like to touch on that. That's on me. I was focused on all the vehicles going on in front. There's now a 3rd commercial entity on there. It would be the same, whether it was this gym guy or allowing storage and warehousing for landscape companies. That would have still triggered this situation. The special permit is to allow motor vehicle and boat repair. Any changes from that require a trip back to the Board of Appeals. Potentially building permit work. That storing in a garage isn't going to trigger a building permit. I'm not so sure about this physical fitness thing one way or the other. If it was just somebody putting their weights in the garage, nobody's going to bother them. If it's actually having the public come in and out using it, I don't know. But regardless, he would at least need permits to change the uses, which we have not.
Well, and I guess I disagree that we've changed the uses. So that's kind of where we are. We're still using the buildings the same way the permit says we can use it. And I guess that's where we disagree.
Well, I guess one of the questions is the permit is specific to 2 garage bays. I think to Marcus's point, you are now using 3 garage bays for 3 separate commercial entities, if I
Right.
understand correctly.
Correct, but not not three doing the same businesses.
But I don't think that's in
Not
question.
three doing what the special permit says that is allowed.
Well, I think Marcus's question is, are the other 3 businesses allowed to operate out of those garage bays without a special permit? And maybe I'm,
Well, the landscaping business doesn't run their machines and everything out of there. They have an office there. And then the garage is either storage or they can, work on any equipment that they want to right there, but they don't use it for warehousing or storing any of their equipment. They have an offsite area for that. The landscaping business is essentially renting a downstairs office and an attached 1-bay garage. And that to me didn't seem to be, it's not a place where the public comes in all the time. It's really just for, it's Hanlon Landscaping, and they just run, have their office there. And then they have equipment sometimes, but mostly it's just storage in the bay. Secondly, the fitness guy, he does have people come, but it's really one at a time and by appointment. In addition, I should also add, because I know there was some concern about parking. I guess the point is the commercial enterprise that are going on at the building are not the type that require that the public comes in and out of frequently. But again, you can make that determination. We did add a larger parking area to the right of the building that was not there originally, to add for additional parking for our tenants. And then as people want to, come and have an appointment or leave.
yeah, I mean, I guess the question is what is the landscape company leaving there? How many vehicles do they have parked there?
They really don't have any except for their workers. And when they come in with their trucks, it's to stop by the office to get something or to get a part that's in the garage or something like that. I mean, you can talk to them. I'm not in tune with their day-to-day business. I just know that whenever I'm there, it's pretty low impact.
Well, how does everybody else feel about this?
Well, point out landscape contractor, and they're in the commercial neighborhood district. Landscape contractor requires special permit. He's running his office from there, and he's storing, whether he's got his vehicles at an entirely different property, which I think I know where that is. That's a whole other kettle of fish. It needed to modify, and nothing against Kate. These zoning's a mess, we all know. But the fact of the matter is, whether she views the uses as being a problem is irrelevant. The law operates as it operates. The home, if Fella's physical fitness thing qualifies as a home occupation, that could have possibly gone in without coming to you because it doesn't need a special permit, but arguably it needed to come in as an alteration to the special permit to at least record it. But certainly Hanlon Landscaping moving in required at least a modification of the special permit.
So I guess then the issue for me is,
Excuse me,
I was under the impression that,
Kate, excuse me. I wanted to get some feed from the board members. Does anybody have any comments?
I have one. And I, for one, would like to view the property. And these pictures that I've got in front of me are telling, and I want to make sure that exactly what I'm looking at and count some vehicles, see how everything works, where the customers park. I have not seen the property in years, so I would like to view it.
I think I'd also like to see a site plan. Usually when we do these commercial, when we used to do these commercial buildings, it's been a long time since they've come in front of us as special permits. We had surveyed site plans that showed where the parking was, where storage areas were. It wasn't what looks to be very haphazardly a haphazard site. So I think having some sort of a survey plan would help to show us where the parking is and where
I
the
did
tenants.
give Eleanor an as-built.
Does it show parking?
I don't know. I think it was just an as-built, so there was no.
So what we're really looking for is a plan
There
that
was some
shows.
sort of a plan done, I think, when we did the special permit.
Yeah, no, what I'm looking for is, and what I'm suggesting, I might be the only one looking for this, but I feel like we sort of want a plan that shows the parking.
Okay.
And everything on the site, and all the different functions on the site.
I think I agree with Lisa, you and Michael. I'd like to see the site there. It feels like there's an awful lot going on there, and I'd like to take a look at it.
So I've seen the site. To me, with regard to the auto repair, I don't think it's that much different than what went on with the boat repair. There was storage, there was work going on outside. And that's why I asked Marcus if, he thought that was a violation, because if the boat repair business was okay, that this isn't much of a creep in terms of the car business. Yeah, it's a different look, but this is approved for that type of thing. But if the boat business wasn't being utilized correctly and in violation, then the car business is, because it is similar. The other two issues are to me a violation, but can probably be rectified. The fitness and the office, to me, the office isn't that much creep in use. And then in terms of the screening, you could use more screening, and I think that could probably be rectified as well. But yeah, in my opinion, there's probably not enough screening than what was contemplated back then.
You want me to share the photos that she sent?
You can, but I think I would like to see a site plan that shows proposed screening. And I want to ask a question about the third bay, the landscape use. Is that something that's a separate issue from this appeal? Correct? That would have to come in separately?
My guess would be if it went towards simply altering the special permit to address the current, this is probably one for town attorney, actually. But my guess would be you could wrap it all into the alteration to the special permit and address it that way. I also just want to make two quick points. Obviously, this was dead part of the big part of the summer. So I haven't been back by, but in fairness to Kay, I doubt a lot looks like it did on these 3 days. And dang, I had a second thought, but I forgot it. At any rate, I really think this is just more of, it's just a situation, it's an old special permit. Things have been as they've always been. Now maybe it's time to get everything brought up to 2020. So that's all.
The things that we normally would require. Yeah. Okay, so should we make a motion to continue and to I don't even know when the next hearing is.
Don't forget to ask about the public.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there anybody from the public who would like to speak?
I'm just refreshing the feed. No, nothing in the chat.
Okay, great. So when is the next hearing, Eleanor?
Next hearing is on November 12th.
Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion to continue this to November 12th?
So moved.
Does anybody else, would anybody else like to see any sort of a site plan
I actually would.
with parking and?
Yeah, just something that shows how, just the setup.
Do you want drainage shown on there?
I'm sorry, Eleanor?
Would you want drainage shown on there? I mean, typical site plans for commercial sites like this, where there's a garage activity, show drainage.
Well, if there is drainage, we'd like to see it, sure.
Yeah, I think that'd be pretty important, sure.
And any proposed screening that you'd like to propose, Kate, to bolster your, the case, that would be great. It would show on that site plan, it'd be called out on the site plan.
Okay.
And do we need to, there's no issue with available parking. It certainly doesn't look that way in terms of the number of parking spaces that are required for the apartments and where they park versus the office versus these garage bays and their storage.
I don't think so, but nobody has told me yes or no. As far as I know, each tenant has a certain number of parking spaces and everything fits.
Right.
You can have your surveyor figure that out, Kate. Any competent surveyor will know how to do the parking calcs pursuant to the uses.
That would be great. Okay, did somebody make that motion?
Yes, I did.
And I seconded.
Okay, all those in favor through roll call, Jim?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Kiram?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Okay. So next application is 2420, which is Linda A. Yates, 21 Derrymore Road, Marion Hanley.
For the applicant, Mary Ann Hanley, this is a request to modify a condition of an existing variance, which required that we couldn't get a CO for the house on the property until the yard sale was complete. Unfortunately, there's been a tremendous amount of delay, both in the world and at the land court, in finalizing the processing of these yard sale procedures with the town. This has actually been going on since 2017. The taking was in 2014. The filing of the plan of the court was in 2017. Some of it's been finalized, but not these parcels. Mrs. Yates got a variance back in May of 2019 and got her building permit and has been working diligently on the house. It complies with the terms of the as-built plan that was submitted, but unfortunately, we can't get a CO because of this condition. There is another condition in the variance that requires that if she declines to purchase the yard sale parcel, that the property would be non-compliant. She has no intention of doing that. As a matter of fact, Mrs. Yates said to me, I would do anything to buy that property. She said, but I can't, my hands are tied behind my back. I've been calling and contacting Eleanor and town council and the land court pretty much every few weeks over the course of the last year. Some of my calls to the land court went unanswered, but yesterday morning, actually, I was lucky enough that the chief title examiner picked up her phone. And she said, we are working on it. She said, it will get done, but she couldn't really she just can't give me a date. She said, the court was shut down for several months. She said, now we're trying to catch up on things that are technically not emergencies, but things she said that really need to be done. And she said, it's on our pile, it will get done. Mrs. Yates, as part of her building process, she got a mortgage. Funds are being withheld from the mortgage because of the lack of a CO. She's got people that want to pay her. And I think it's in the public interest to get a certificate of occupancy issued, to have the building inspector go in there and make the final inspections, instead of having a dwelling that just sits there without any finalization on the building permit part of it. So I basically am asking that you eliminate that condition about holding the certificate of occupancy until the yard sale is completed. As I said, we still are required to buy the property under the terms of the variance. That's not going away. Nothing on the ground has gone away. And the upshot of all of this is that when in fact she finalizes the yard sale, the property will be totally conforming. We won't even need the variance anymore. So I would ask that you give us this eliminate that condition so that we can go forward and at least get the building permit closed out for the dwelling that's under construction.
Eleanor, may I ask a question?
Of course.
I'm sorry, not Eleanor. Sorry, Susan.
Yeah.
So Marianne, they can close out the permit from the perspective of having the building department do the final walkthrough, correct?
Yeah, I believe that they can, but they can't issue an occupancy certificate.
Right, but if they have their card signed off by the building commissioner.
But you still can't use it. You know,
Well, no. I'm just saying that that's not going to prevent that. It's not like if the code changes in 3 weeks, they're not going to have a sign off. They will have a sign off. They just won't have their C of O, but he won't go back and re-inspect.
Right. I'm not sure if they will. I'm not sure how they handle it, the building department. They may not do a final sign off if they can't issue a CO. I'm not really sure.
They do. I mean, they'll walk through the building and sign off. And then if you don't have your as-built, you won't get your final CO.
You could ask Paul Murphy. He happens to be unmutable.
Paul, do you want to answer that question about whether you would close out a building permit without knowing you can't issue a CO?
Yeah, I have no objection to closing out the building permit and then just holding off on issuing the CO until those matters are resolved. But we can definitely finish up building department business and just hold off until everything's squared away. Yeah, no problem at all.
Okay, thank you.
So my comment on this one is that, I feel for Mrs. Yates. I myself have clients that have things held up in land court, and it's a really long delay. But the no CO was a condition that I recall we felt very strongly about, and there was no guarantee at that point when the land court was going to approve whatever they need to do, file the S petition and do the new certificate of title. So I get it. Does it? So I understand her desperation. I also understand the frustration, but I think, in my opinion, that was one of the linchpins in this decision for us, was that we were reluctant to even grant any relief. I personally was reluctant to grant any relief, and the condition of not issuing the CO was sort of the thing that got us over the hurdle of that. I had a question about the pool that was mentioned in the staff report, where that is going, and if construction of that needs to be done or can't occur until she owns that other parcel, or how that fits into this, because it wasn't quite clear to me.
It's my understanding that the pool is fully compliant and has nothing to do with the side yard setback issue. And it is under construction, a permit issue for it.
Okay.
The real issue here is, as I said, is the side yard setback on the side that abuts the paper street.
Right, and I do remember because we went through a couple of hearings on this, because we didn't know why they didn't just pull that side in and be compliant.
Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair, may I say something just to contribute a little?
Sure.
So you may recall at the hearing, it was a different attorney at the time. There were 3 hearings, and it was primarily to allow for me to reach out, and you signed a letter, Susan, to town council to do what we could to expedite things moving along. And in fact, the S petition, because of that activity, was filed right before or around the time that our final decision was made, and we granted the relief, which was huge progress. Unfortunately, as Marianne stated, she's absolutely right. The ridiculous delays. They changed the chief land court examiner, retired, and a new one came in right before COVID. And but I'm told by town council, to whom I reach out on a near daily basis about these matters, including this one, Mrs. Yates has reached out to me consistently, wondering if there have been any activity or updates or progress. She's one of many, and I contact town council all the time. And I'm told consistently by her what she is told by the land court examiner, and I'm flabbergasted that Marianne succeeded in getting in touch with her. You were very lucky. I wish you told her. I have some other things I want to tell her. But anyway, she's told that if it's an emergency, that it can be expedited. And such emergencies include things like a P&S that is, where there's a time delay. Maybe something like financing could be considered an emergency. So it's possible that I could reach out to town council again to urge her to consider this an emergency, or at least try to, with the land court examiner, given that there's financing on the line.
Is that the case, Marianne, that there's financing on the line?
She said something about a
Financing
mortgage.
in place, but Susan, you're familiar with the fact that certain amounts of financing get withheld until a certificate of occupancy is issued. Normally it's 10%. I'm not really sure what it is in this case. And just the other thing that I did want to mention again is, and I was not at the original hearings on this, but what we're talking about here is a side yard setback that's going to be a 5-foot setback that will be required in this district. Right now, we've proceeded in accordance with the variance, and the existing structure is about 2.2 feet from the line of the paper street. The paper street itself is 15 to 16 and a half feet wide. So once we get the paper street, the setback is going to be over 17 feet, and it only requires 5 feet. So, I mean, to me, it would be helpful if it would, as you said, desperation's a good word. It would be wonderful if Mrs. Yates could start to use this property for what it was intended. She's worked really hard to build in accordance with the building permit. She's had absolutely no control over what happens. Eleanor's right. The town did file the S petition just before the last meeting. Unfortunately, the land court waited about several months after that to appoint what they call their own title examiner. Mm-hmm. Town council thought that the title exam had been filed, but come to find out it had been filed for a different piece of property altogether. Again, more confusion at the court. And when the title report that was required was submitted, it landed on the desk of the land court at the end of February of this year. And we all know what happened in the beginning of March. Everything shut down. So it just hasn't been looked at. So I would really appreciate getting maybe a view from the other members of the board where you think you would go on this before we continue the discussion, because Eleanor has brought up an interesting point about the emergency. It certainly would have to be initiated by town council, the emergency request. They will not take it from me because my client does not own the property.
Yep.
Who owns the property?
Go ahead.
Huh?
No, it's Jim going to talk.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Sorry.
I took that when we initially met on this. I took that hardline approach of requiring the CO. It just seemed the right thing to do. But since then, to me, this is an unreasonable amount of time, and considering the circumstances of this particular property, at the risk of opening the floodgates for more of this, if other properties are held up like this, if I were to vote on it, I would vote to remove the CO requirement because of all these circumstances that have occurred.
Okay.
I mean, it's really unreasonable.
I agree that it's unreasonable, but my feelings are probably aligned with Susan. We were pretty resolute in our thinking prior, and I think that Mrs. Yates could have designed a house that fit within the setbacks as they are, and it was her choice to not do that, to construct a larger house and closer to the setbacks, and that's all fine. I would like to see them try and go down this hardship route before I were to agree to remove this condition personally.
Okay. Michael O'Meara, do you have any comments on this one, Michael?
I'm wondering, we've got some pretty smart people in front of us. I'm wondering why we can't accommodate the applicant and get her a CO and be with some certainty have the property owner buy the land when it's available. And I'm curious, has there already been a negotiation between the town and the applicant?
Well, Eleanor, you can explain the yard sale program, but the applicant is the direct abutter, so she has first dibs on the property.
Okay.
Town won't sign a purchase and sales agreement until the day they sign the deed.
Has the price been determined?
I believe there's a formula for that determination, Eleanor, that.
There is. The real estate assessment committee will come up with the price factor based on recommendations by the assessors and neighborhood price factors.
That doesn't come till after this is done, right? I mean, I read somewhere in the packet when you're talking about the process, or maybe it was in the staff report, that won't happen till later. So Michael, that's a great idea. If we could get, because I think that was our main concern, right? Our concern was, and one of the abutters, or a concerned citizen that wrote in on page 189, our concern was that we're allowing construction in the setback that we wouldn't normally allow, and she didn't really need to do if this paper road wasn't coming. I agree that yes, she's going to have this giant setback of the paper road 16.53 feet, I think. So she'll have this giant setback of 18.73 or something. But the concern was that, if she got this and then didn't buy it, and decided to live with the non-conforming status and what that would mean. So I do agree that the time is so long. They've really the land court has been dragging out a lot of things. She's not the only person who's being held up by this. And I don't know that, Eleanor, are you the emergency situation, a purchase and sale agreement? I don't think that rises to the level.
I have been told it does.
Well, I personally, I have people trying to do something that hasn't risen to the level, because we are waiting as well. That was not risen to the level. So if this could get treated as emergency, then that would be great. So Michael's suggestion would be, I think we should maybe look to continue this and see if the town can but I can finish polling the board, but based on Michael's comments.
I have one more comment.
Sure, go ahead, sorry.
With your approval, of course, I'm wondering, assuming town council is still with us, if he has any creative suggestions that would accommodate both parties.
Alex, are you here?
Hi, Madam Chair. I am on the call. I'm glad to work with some of the folks. I do more of the litigation side of things, so I'm glad to work with some of the folks in our real estate department and try to negotiate a deal here. I'm sure something can be accommodated.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
So let's see, we heard, Kiram, did we hear from you?
I really don't have much to say on it. I'm just trying to figure out if it's an emergency or an inconvenience. So to your point, maybe it'd be good to continue it, figure some things out. I'd like to accommodate the applicant, but I also want to make sure that we're not doing something that's going to be somewhat risky and that we're going to end up paying for later on down the line. And that's all.
Okay, so maybe we look to continue, and in that time, Eleanor, you can explore with town council if there's any, even like a letter of intent or something that the town would be willing to sign with her, solidifying that she's going to purchase the property, and or at the same time try to research or appeal to the court for that emergency status. My understanding of the emergency status is that it's
I would have Mary Ann reach out to town council about that, I think. I mean, that's what's been going on, or the abutter directly reaching out, but she can do it.
I'm happy to talk to town council as well as try and make further inroads with the land court. As I said, as Eleanor noticed, I was shocked yesterday when someone actually picked up the phone.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I mean, I could certainly make a case for this being an emergency. You know, this is housing.
Yeah.
This is
Well,
housing.
and
The house
Marianne-
can't be occupied simply because of the fact that the land court hasn't done what it should have done 6 months ago. Understandably, you know, they had their hands tied behind their backs too. It's the whole situation is very unfortunate. I don't really think we're setting any kind of a precedent for going forward on other cases, but I'm happy to try and take up some more steps to see if we can get this thing worked out before the next meeting. When is the next meeting, Eleanor?
November 10th?
November 12. And I don't want to give any guarantees about that. It's just something that town council has brought to my attention.
What, when the next meeting is?
No,
No,
about
November
the emergency aspect of things.
That's something that we can finesse that, I think.
Just in the context of the land court being partially open and not open to the public, and they're working remotely. The emergency context is to do with things that they will put more or less at the front of the line when they're actually in their offices.
Listen, I have a question. Linda, are you completely done with the house? Is the construction 100% complete?
Is Linda on?
Yes, she's muted.
Oh.
Kids.
I don't think she can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Okay.
Yeah, now we can.
I can hear you.
The house is completely done, yes. The landscaping is in process.
I would suggest that you go to have your builder or whoever submit your building permit, completed building permit with all the sign-offs, along with a registered plot plan of what has happened now to Paul Murphy, and then let him take it under advisement and make sure that he's done everything he needs to do. So when this thing does happen, you can go right to a certificate of occupancy.
Okay. Yes, thank you. I will.
Okay, so does anyone else is there anyone in the public that wanted to speak on this one, Eleanor?
I don't see anything. Let me refresh. No, nothing is appearing.
Okay, and the only letter we had was from Mr. Bedell at 5 Delaney Road?
Correct.
Okay. So would someone like to make a motion to continue to the November 12th meeting?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
And Michael seconds. Okay. So I will just read down the list. Lisa Botticelli.
Aye.
Michael O'Mara.
Aye.
Karen Kosatek.
Aye.
And Jeff Thayer.
Aye.
And myself, aye.
Moving on.
We're all set. Okay, great. Thank you. We'll see
Thank
you
you
next
very
month.
much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next application.
Make sure that's off before Kim starts talking.
Linda, I think you're still on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Hello.
Linda, honey, you're still on.
I muted her. It's okay.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so our next application is 2020 Drew and Jessica Guth, DJG Associated LLC, Edward and Marilyn Gregory et al. Appellants 1 and 3 Reeds Way, represented by Attorney Bailey. Attorney
And,
Bailey.
I was just going to point out that Ed has joined, Susan. If
Oh,
you-
good.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, great.
I do have a
Sure.
comment that my parents owned across the street from this property for about 40 years or plus. Haven't owned for maybe 2 years, and I had nothing to do with it, but I don't feel like it's a conflict, but I just wanted to bring it up to see if anybody else did.
Ed, maybe you can stop bragging. Thanks.
Okay, it looks like nobody thinks there's a conflict there.
All right.
Attorney Bailey, do you want to start your presentation?
Yes, I do, but I will immediately yield the floor to my co-counsel, Attorney DeBenedictis, who's going to start the presentation, and then after she's done, I'm going to come back and finish it. So, Danielle, the floor is yours.
I don't see her. Where is she?
She was on earlier.
Danielle, there she is.
Can you see me?
Can't see you, but we can hear you.
Our video. Hold on. Hit it. Here I am. Okay.
Yep.
Essentially, it's our position that this case has been decided already by the Massachusetts Appeals Court, which is the highest court in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, in the case of Stevens versus Zoning Board of Appeals. And I have asked Eleanor Antonetti to blow up some things for me, and one of them is a quote from the Stevens versus Zoning Board of Appeals case. Eleanor, could you show that to the board now?
You'll need to tell me what page of the packet that's on, Danielle. You didn't actually reach out to me specifically, so you'll need to give me a little help.
Okay. It's the last page of the packet.
The very last page?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to share the packet and we'll go to the last page. Hold on. Do you see it?
Yes, I see it, and I assume the board sees it.
Yes.
So in the Bourne case, a property located in a residential area, which it's indisputed that this property is located in Lug 3, the highest residential area in Nantucket, was being used as a wedding venue and conducted pursuant to rental contracts with unrelated third parties for financial gain. When that matter came before the zoning board and then before the Superior Court and then before the Appeals Court issued this binding decision that says this use is commercial. It cannot be considered to be accessory to a permitted residential use. And I know that respectively submit that this board is bound by the decision of the highest court in Massachusetts that the use of properties like Whales Watch in residential areas where they advertise, and the court put a lot of weight on the fact that they were advertising for weddings, that they were not renting their houses as residential houses. They were advertising for weddings. And in fact, they were competing with other wedding sites as here. And here you'll see in the package that I prepared, in the first graphic, maybe we can go to that now, Eleanor. They advertise from their own website. Let us help. And
could you please tell me what page that would be?
Page 1.
No, it wouldn't be page 1 of the packet. What page of the packet?
441.
Okay.
Or 440.
How's this?
There
Is
you
that
go,
good?
41.
Okay.
Okay, so there, and this was very much similar, if not identical, to what they were doing in Bourne, advertising as a wedding and an event place. And the court said, anybody that's advertising on the internet, now you can move to the next page, 442. And the not.com is a common wedding site where people go to get information about having weddings on Nantucket and other places. They affirmatively say Whales Watch Estate is a waterfront wedding venue situated on Nantucket Island. This is not legally possible pursuant to the Bourne case, and also, as Dan will point out to you after I'm through, it's not allowed by the Nantucket zoning bylaw. You can't create a business out in a commercial area. And now, if you go to, I think the most important page is page 443, which is they're bragging in this advertisement that they are in a residential area, and therefore the same regulations that apply to people in a commercial regulated area and commercial establishments don't apply to them. And they're also saying, in addition to having tented area outside, they have space for 75 people in a common room and 40 guests. And then if you go to the very last page, you'll see, well, it's the second to last page, where they're advertising actually on Google. And here are some pictures of what these events look like. But here, could you go back to that one, Eleanor, the one just before this? No, right after the truck. Here they're advertising you can stay here in a residential area for $49 a night, and you can actually check in and check out like a hotel. And this is in the Lug 3 residential area. I mean, I think these pictures make it very clear that what's going on here is a highly commercial activity in a residential area, and it should be barred. And in fact, very similar to this, the courts have already said it's a residential area. It's a commercial use in a residential area that cannot be allowed. So I feel this issue has already been decided by the courts, and if this matter goes beyond the Zoning Board of Appeals to a court, the court will find in my client's favor, because the courts are bound by precedent. And there's a lot in our brief that where we're citing cases to show that there is legal precedent in an appeals court decision, and that is binding on a superior court. So then we come to this other situation, which I find really striking, is that we have a situation over at Westmore Farms, which is practically identical to what's going on here at Whales Watch. And earlier this year, the building inspector issued a cease and desist order to Westmore Farms. And why he didn't issue a cease and desist order on the exact same set of facts to Whales Watch, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. John Piles, who owned Westmore Farms, asserted that he was a resident of Westmore Farms. Just the way I understand Mr. Reed asserts that he resides at times in this property. I know he resides other places such as Boston and South Carolina, but he says he does reside there. Well, John Piles, when the building inspector asked him, do you reside there, submitted something at a much higher level than Mr. Reed has ever submitted, which was an affidavit signed under the penalties of perjury, written by an attorney, attesting to the fact that he resided at Westmore Farms, and that was hand delivered to the building inspector. So the building inspector, after receiving that, issued a cease and desist order saying that the activity was commercial in nature. Now, the person who spearheaded this, as my clients are spearheading this attempt to stop a commercial activity in a residential area, was Terry Eichler, and she's going to be heard here today. She's waiting to be recognized, and she'll explain to you how that she's examined the record of Whales Watch, and she's very familiar with the record of Westmore Farms, and she worked on this for about 3 years, and they're absolutely identical. So there is no reason for the building inspector to have issued a cease and desist order against Westmore Farms and not here against Whales Watch. However, it's troubling that may be on a lot of levels. the primary argument here is this matter has already been decided by the highest court in Massachusetts, and the zoning board should order Wales Wash to cease and desist, because surely the courts will if the zoning board doesn't. And there is in the zoning inspector's decision where he says that this is an accessory use to a residential this use of the property as a wedding venue can be considered an accessory use to a residence. That is just absolutely incorrect under Nantucket zoning laws. And Dan Bailey, who I'm sure is familiar with all of you, is an expert in zoning laws. He'll take over from here and he'll explain as to why under no circumstances can a commercial activity be considered to be accessory in a residential area. But I submit to you, you don't even have to reach that question, which is a somewhat more complicated legal analysis, because the highest court in Massachusetts has already determined that the use of a property as a wedding venue in a residential area constitutes a commercial activity that is not allowed and cannot be considered to be accessory to residential use. So I now cede the floor to Mr. Bailey.
Thank you, Danielle.
Before you begin,
sure.
Mr. Bailey, does anyone on the board have any comments that you'd like to address to Danielle before Mr. Bailey moves on? No. Okay. Go ahead.
As Danielle said, I'm going to speak a little bit more specifically to the Nantucket bylaw and how accessory uses are treated under the bylaw. What Mr. Murphy did in denying the request for enforcement was to find that the existing Wales Watch use is an accessory use and is not a residential use. So, bear with me briefly for always the driest part of any ZBA hearing when we start to talk about defined terms. But the Nantucket definition of accessory use is separate structures, buildings, or uses which are subordinate and customarily incidental to a principal structure, building, or use. And it's also important to get out that the definition of commercial use is as in trade, occupation, or business, including a transient residential facility, but excluding government, religious, or private residential uses. What Mr. Murphy found was that the property was principally used for residential purposes, that it was owner occupied most of the year, that the wedding use was 10 weeks or less, that the occasional use as a wedding venue does not meet the definition of a principal commercial use, and that homes on Nantucket are customarily rented and weddings and celebrations are often associated with the underlying residential use of the property. Respectfully, we believe that Mr. Murphy is incorrect in his interpretation of accessory uses. So there are 4 important points to touch on when you're talking about accessory uses. It's got to be subordinate, it's got to be customary, and it's got to be incidental to the new principal use. It also cannot be a commercial use. I'm going to briefly talk about each one. Wales Watch is not any of these. It's not subordinate, it's not customary, and it's not incidental to the single family zoning in Lug 3. You've already seen from the photographs and other information, and I don't think that there's any dispute that the size and the scope of the Wales Watch operation is considerable. And events occur regularly: 300 to 400 person tented weddings, amplified music, tour bus transportation, caterers, musicians, and porta potties. I don't understand how under any set of circumstances that sort of use can be subordinate to a single family use. I would even argue that if it was the property owner having a wedding of that magnitude, that would not be accessory, because the size and scope of it simply can't be subordinate to a single family use. The Massachusetts Supreme Court has stated in the Henry versus Board of Appeals Dunstable case that a subordinate use is one which is minor. Again, there's nothing minor about what's happening with these weddings and other events. I mean, I also want to mention, it's not just weddings that we're talking about here. Mr. Guth will testify later about the other events that have been occurring at Wales Watch quite regularly this fall. The same court, the Henry v. Board of Appeals Court, went into some detail about what incidental means in the context of an accessory use. And it said that it is not enough that the use be subordinate. It also must be attendant and concomitant. Interpreting accessory use provisions require that the incidental use be minor, again, that word minor, and relating to the principal use, and that it be a reasonable relation to the primary use. An event facility is not primarily related to a single family use. Also, I think the key fact here, I don't think, and we are not arguing that weddings don't occur at single family residential properties on Nantucket. People have weddings, people have large weddings, tented weddings, caterers, musicians, but they have them for their family. They have them for their friends. And this was a critical issue in the Bourne case. This is a site for hire. You've seen the advertising, you've seen the lease that goes out to the renters. So that fact, I think, is what turns it from potentially an accessory use into something that is no question not an accessory use. And it's not customary for residential property owners to rent their properties to third party for events. Sure, it's customary on Nantucket to rent your property for people to vacation. We are not, I want to be very clear, we're not raising that issue. We don't object to that. But this takes the situation to a completely different level with the size and intensity of the use. Finally, I want to mention and go back to the definition of commercial. There simply could be no question that this is a commercial use. And the definition says, as in trade, occupation, or business. Look at the advertising. It's plainly advertised as a commercial use. And what I'll do is I'll read to you, this is in the materials, I think it's the third slide, but I can just read it.
You want me to share it? I can.
Yeah, that would be great, Eleanor.
You're just going to have to tell me.
243, I think.
All right, hold on. I'll pull it up again.
Not 243.
Uh-oh, now I'm having an issue. Great. Sometimes Zoom doesn't cooperate.
It's the one, the not add Whales Watch.
Hold on, I'm going to have to. Something is up here. Give me a second. This happened to me last time. It's malfunctioning. It's not letting me do it. I'm sorry. Do you have, you could maybe do it.
No, I have some technical challenges.
Sorry. I don't know why it's not allowing me to do this, but.
Yeah, I will just read it. This was the third slide in the packet. And it's titled "The Not Ad Whales Watch, Famous Wedding Venue Opening Up 2020 Availability." About halfway through the package, through that slide, it says, "Our property is a great option because we are able to offer a comprehensive solution to all your wedding weekend location needs. Space to hold the ceremony and large reception outside on the lawn or beach, enough bedrooms to sleep 40 guests, and room indoors in the upstairs common area for a more intimate party of up to 75. We offer wedding rentals of 4 to 7 days for $25,000 to $35,000. If that's not a commercial use, I don't know what is." And with that, I will close. And unless Danielle has anything further, that concludes our presentation. And I would respectfully urge the board to reverse the decision of the building inspector and find that the operation of the current Whales Watch property is not accessory and is in fact a commercial use. I do have some of my clients with me. I know normally that the way that and they want to speak, I know normally that the way that the board conducts these hearings is they typically would after the appellant, they'll usually look to the building inspector and to the property owner. So I'll reserve my client's opportunity to speak after that.
Dan, I would like to be heard on another issue before that happens, a legal issue, and that would be the issue of standing. And there is much in Attorney Kryberg, who is representing the Whales Watch property, and much in his submission that talks about the fact that this matter has been settled 20 years ago. This is a specious argument because it's very obvious, as in the Bourne case, when one of the abutters had entered into an agreement with the Board of Selectmen. The case, in fact, if you read the whole decision of Bourne, about 3/4 of it is devoted to this issue of standing. And it's very clearly held that any abutter who was not a party to that agreement had the standing to bring this up again before the Zoning Board of Appeals. And then that went to the Superior Court and then to the Appeals Court. So the argument that's made by Attorney Kryberg, the logical conclusion of it is—
Excuse me. My last name is Kyberg, please.
Oh, excuse me. Okay. Excuse me.
Danielle, I appreciate this the issue of standing, and I could read between the lines, reading both your position and the others, but I don't think we need to. This board needs to decide that. That's more for a court of law. So it's a point that can be argued, but I don't think we need to argue it here.
Okay, I'm only wanted to speak to it because of the fact that the other side made a lot out of it, and it's just very obvious that I couldn't agree with a neighbor to conduct an amusement park on my property and then have that be a binding.
We can talk through that if that comes up. But so Dan Bailey has finished his presentation. I can either go Peter Kyberg to you, or I can go to Alex, or you guys can, one of you can go first and then the other, and then we'll hear from Paul Murphy.
Madam Chair, I will defer to Attorney Kyberg and Mr. Murphy at this point, and then if any questions come up after that, I'm glad to address them.
Okay, great. So Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Counsel for the appellant has made a lot of use of the word precedence, and I'm glad, because that's exactly what this case is. It's been decided on precedence already. This started initially with the predecessor in title to Ms. De Benedictis' client 20-something years ago, as I outlined in my brief to the ZBA. I won't go over it in great detail, but suffice it to say that the same claims were made some 21 years ago against Mr. Reed's predecessor in title, the Elliots. That complaint was made the same way. The most important point to take out of all this is that the houses have not changed that he rents for family gatherings. They have not increased in bedrooms. They have not increased in floors. They have not increased in size, nor have the wedding events that happened there have increased in number. In fact, 21 years ago, before this all started, there were more events. Complaints were made to the building inspector, almost identically worded, identical complaints. Building inspector at that time was Jack Dunn, who issued a written decision that these uses were incidental to residential use and customary on the island of Nantucket. That decision was appealed to the then zoning board, who supported the building inspector. That decision was appealed to Superior Court. There was a full trial held, which Mr. Elliott won. And in fact, the court, if you look at the decision, most important, the court does adopt 100% the decision of the building inspector that these types of activities are customary and normal on Nantucket. He made that determination that there was no nuisance. He also addressed that issue. He addressed that these uses were well within the current bylaw at that time. Since that time, the bylaw has changed. Most important though, after that decision, the neighbors did not want to stop and wanted to open a new case in the appeals court. At that time, Mr. Elliott and the neighbors got together and signed an agreement that's registered in the land court and is binding on the properties, particularly on Ms. De Benedictis' client. That agreement is still in the land court, and that agreement allows for 4 weddings per year. Now, Mr. Bailey has made a lot of work about the the weddings are not a residential use, not incidental to a residential use. The weddings occur 4 times per year. That's 1 out of 13, 1/13 of the year. It's not a significant departure from what other people do. And it's something that has always occurred on Nantucket, as was determined in the Superior Court. The Superior Court on Nantucket has already considered this case, already rendered that decision and that opinion. So bound by this opinion, still the neighbors come forward with an identical complaint, identical fact pattern. And to his credit, our building inspector made the same decision on the same basis as the last building inspector and as the last zoning board did, and as the Superior Court also decided. All those decisions are in keeping, they're all consistent. What's not consistent is Ms. de Benedict is saying that a different court in a different jurisdiction has decided our case for us. Nothing could be further from the truth. Precedence is only as powerful as the commonality in the fact patterns. And I can tell you the fact pattern in that case and the fact pattern in this case are not the same. We have not only precedence, but if this case were brought again in the Superior Court on Nantucket, it would be barred by res judicata. It's exactly the same fact pattern. Nobody has made any kind of representation or decent argument that somehow the activities occurring on 103 Reed's Way are any different now than they were in years past. In fact, I would say that they're identical on the basis that the buildings have not gotten any bigger. There's no increase in bedrooms. There's no increase in any of the physical plant of those buildings that would make these uses more in any way. And again, there's been some mention of the Westmore case. And again, precedence is only as valuable as the commonality of the facts. The Westmore is a different animal, is a different situation. It's entirely consistent to issue a cease and desist order against the Westmore for having events that are that occur on a daily or a 48-hour basis, as opposed to Mr. Reed's residence that is a residence 12/13 of the time of the year, except for the wedding events that happened there at that time. And these rentals are for weeks at a time or a week at a time, as opposed to the Westmore. Last, again, I would just like to go back to the agreement signed by the Hoeys and whose successor and title is the Guffs, who are here today, somehow having come signed on to this agreement by buying the property. This agreement is a deed restriction against the properties. Everyone knew it was there, yet still, Ms. de Benedictus's client came and bought the property knowing very well the long history of this property, the agreement that binds both people, and yet they're here asking for something more than the agreement to which they already agreed and has already been registered in the land court as a binding agreement. There's been no bylaw violation here, and the building inspector was correct in finding that. And there's actually not been a single specific offered for the bylaw violation. Nobody has said that a particular wedding has violated the bylaw or a particular event violated a certain bylaw. There's been no accusation of that of any kind. It's just innuendo and a lot of fluff and a lot of repetition of the same thing over and over. And that's exactly what this case is. And I'll stop now, is a repetition of something that was already heard. I was the lawyer for that Superior Court case 21 years ago. I was the lawyer for the ZBA case that preceded that, the appeal of the building inspector's decision that was upheld then. And I can tell you this is a flat out repetition and frankly, I think a waste of time. Thank you.
Does anyone on the board have any questions for Attorney Kyberg before I go to Paul Murphy?
I have a question for Attorney Bailey. I just want to make sure I understood him correctly. Regarding the number of people that are required at a wedding, the catering, the lighting truck, the band, the porta potties, etc. I thought I heard him say that the owner of the property wouldn't even be allowed to have a wedding at that house. Did I hear that correctly, Mr. Bailey?
That's what I heard.
Yes, I'm not making that case here today, but I think it would be an interesting and open question whether someone could have a wedding of that size and scope in a residential neighborhood and call it an accessory use. Because, you know, at some point you go from having people over to your house and a residential use to a restaurant and commercial use. Where's that number? 50, 100, 200? Well, I don't know. But I think when you get to 300 and catering and all those things, that becomes something that is not subordinate to a residential use and therefore is not accessory.
Thank you.
I just want to piggyback on that. But in your same presentation, Attorney Bailey, you also said that, you know, being on Nantucket, people do rent their homes routinely. Most people who do it, who can, will do it for 8 to 10 weeks if they can, and they consider themselves lucky to do it. And people do have weddings at their houses, and weddings are not a small affair. And people having weddings at home customarily have all of those bells and whistles with it. Again, if they can afford it, that would be the preference for most people. So to say that, I think your argument is stretched to say that having a wedding at your home is not an incidental use. And if you maybe in a different community, but in this community, which is a highly seasonal community, residential owners renting their homes for even 12 weeks if they can or more is not considered, customarily, is not considered a commercial use. So
I don't dispute that at all.
Okay.
You know, that's another case you're going to have to deal with at some point, probably, but that's not the case we have here. What we have here is somebody renting out a property as a venue, a wedding venue. You know, it's not being rented, you know, at least according to the advertising, you know, like, you know, someone else might rent out their house and just.
We're not discussing that though. We're only discussing the weddings. So the fact that they choose to advertise on a couple of sites as a wedding venue to try to attract someone who's having a wedding, we're not addressing whether they're also on VRBO or they have it listed with a local broker or whatever for a family who's coming who wants to rent 1 or 3 properties for a multi-generational vacation. That's not on the table here. The only thing that we're talking about is the use of it for the weddings or events. I don't, how they advertise online, that doesn't really have anything to do for me with what this question is for me. So, okay, I'm going to move over to Paul Murphy. So Paul, if you can just address the board about your decision in this one. And then I would also love to hear from you how you differentiate this from Westmore Farms, because I do think there are some differences.
Yeah, thanks. You know, I don't have a lot more to add than what's contained in my letter. Attorney Kyberg did a beautiful job, and that's a tough act to follow. But this differs from Westmore Farm because of intensity. You know, in the aggregate, you've got 52 weeks a year. The property owner has represented that in total, he rents it for less than 10. So that includes families and other gatherings and events, including weddings. And when you look at this in the aggregate, you're looking at 9 weeks, 10 weeks. And I think that's subordinate enough where I would never make the connection to a commercial use. So, you know, I made a site visit. I spoke with Mr. Reed. I talked with the abutters. And, you know, as the building inspector, it's not always easy to call balls and strikes. And I was faced with making a decision. And I think the correct one is that this is an accessory use and that it's not a commercial use based on the definition of the bylaw and the intensity in which it's used out of the 52 weeks a year. I mean, this is rental of property on Nantucket. I mean, people, properties are sold because of rental potential, and it's no different off island. So I don't know, I feel I've made the right decision, and I don't know if I totally answered your question, Susan, but I may have gotten off track a little bit. But
No, I think you did.
That's how I feel.
Okay, I think you did, and I think we'll probably come back to you. Alex, do you have anything to add that we might have missed?
Not at this point, Madam Chair. If any members have any questions, glad to address them.
Okay. So I'm going to go down the list. Does anyone on the board have a question that they immediately want to ask, or if not, then I will go down the list.
I have a quick question.
Sure, Ed.
Paul, so I don't really understand the difference between Westmore Farms and this one. What was Westmore Farms doing, which was a private property, correct? It wasn't Westmore Club, it was Westmore Farms LLC or something, owned by John Piles. What was he doing that was different than what is being done here?
Yeah, I made the determination that was the primary use of the property based on the complaints from the neighbors, and which is distinctly different from the Reed properties. It's not the primary use of the property because of the amount of times and the number of events that are held there. Yeah, so intensity.
So again, just so I understand, because I'm not familiar with that property at all, they were trying to do or did do events. It was much more of an event issue than just the rental issue?
Yeah, yes, definitely.
Okay. Were they doing more than 4 weddings a year there?
I off the top of my head, I don't know how many weddings they were doing each year. I don't have that material in front of me, but I know that based on my observations and the information that I collected, that was the primary use of the property.
May I interject?
The primary use being rental of property to, I guess I just don't understand the distinction. I mean, it seems the Whale Watch is primarily a rental property. I don't believe or maybe the owner uses it at some point, but what were they? Well, I just don't understand the difference between the two.
Yeah, the difference being the number of events being held and how the property is used. Mr. Reed has represented that he's there about 40 weeks a year off and on between Boston, down south, and Nantucket. And Westmore Farms is held out as a venue available for rental all year.
I've seen Cabana on the
Okay.
architectural drawing.
All right, that's it for me for now.
Whatever you want. I just like
Paul, is the person behind you want to speak?
Marcus Silverstein.
Okay.
Yeah. They don't limit their, Westmore doesn't limit their events. They in fact even solicit corporate retreats and whatnot like that. We don't have, the events are presumed to be very frequent, particularly through the summer and into the fall, spring as well. Where they get around is Westmore's designed so they don't really need tents. Everything's in Red Barn or in Green Barn. I think most of us are probably familiar with those structures. So as far as weddings and whatnot, they're not restricted in the same way that Reed's Way would be, since they don't really have the inside event space and whatnot. They're required to have tents. And like Paul said, it's really intensity and use and how the property is being marketed.
Okay, thank you, Marcus. Sorry, I couldn't see you because I had everybody pinned on top, so I could just see the person. I couldn't see his head. Sorry. Okay, so
have a
Ed,
question
does
for
that
Mark.
help answer your question?
Well, I just wanted to follow up with Marcus. So is there any restriction as to the length of time that, other than the lovely weather in the winter, the length of time that Whale Watch can or does rent?
Well,
They-
Whale Watch is restricted by the agreement that Peter discussed earlier, which is another key difference. Westmore has no such agreement. There's never been anything establishing them to be able to hold these kind of events, as opposed to Whale Watch, which does have that. And as far as I'm aware, has been adhering to it.
You're referring to the 4 weddings a year?
Yes.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Ed, for now? Okay.
No, yeah.
Madam
Okay.
Chairperson, my client can speak to the violation of that for events.
Okay, well, thank you, Danielle. I'm going to finish going through the board first. So Lisa, do you have any comments or questions that you'd like to get answered at this time?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Michael, did you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think that it's probably important to mention regarding the agreement that Marcus referred to, that is an agreement which I believe is with the neighbors, not with the Zoning Board of Appeals.
It is with the neighbors, correct.
Madam Chair, Alex here, sorry. If I could just make one point in regards to the Stevens versus Bourne case that was referenced by Applicant's counsel. I think there's a very important factual distinction there in that the appeals court specifically referenced as a basis for upholding the zoning board's determination that it was a commercial use, that the owner of the property did not reside there. Here, according to Mr. Reed, he does reside there the vast majority of the year. So I just wanted to point out that's an important distinction, I think, in that appellate case that renders it not specifically binding on what's before you.
Okay, thank you. I find that is important.
Can I ask a question about that, Susan?
Can I speak to that point? Or
Hold on one second. I'm going to go to Ed Toole, please.
Alex, so when you say Mr. Reed makes the claim that he resides there, so that is his primary residence, that's where he pays taxes, etc.?
I mean, it's my understanding that he either lives there or rents, not for just wedding related uses, but for more residential type uses the vast majority of the year. In other words, he's not, renting it out for large events the majority of the time. So that's the distinction, I think, from the Stevens case.
Okay, but not, you made the distinction. I thought that he made the claim that he lived there.
I believe that. Well, we can hear from him on that issue.
Yeah, I think also we have to think about residing. We have a number of people on the island who would say they reside on Nantucket, but it's not their full-time residence. They may come here, I don't know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 2 months, and either do or don't rent their house out, but it's still their second home. So I don't feel that. I'm more concerned about how many times it's rented for a wedding versus determining how much he resides there. I mean, if he gets a 2-week vacation from his job in August and comes here, or whenever, and comes here, and that's when he comes, then that's his choice. So, but I feel like that is an important distinction, because I feel like that was also part of the Westmore Farms, was although the gentleman who owned it may have been there for some time, he was renting it out the vast majority of the time it was being used for events. So let's see. So I was on, Michael, I think you did not have any more comments. Sorry.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Karen, do you have anything to add at this time?
Not really. I was just kind of more curious to find out what was going on there on the property the other weeks, not the 10 to 13 that they claim to be renting.
Okay, well, after we go through the board, I'll go to Mr. Reed and ask him that question. or I can ask through his attorney if he wants. Jeff, do you have any comments or questions for anyone at this time?
I'm okay for now. Thank you.
Okay. And did Mark Poor ever make it on?
Let me see. He's still connecting to audio.
Okay. Jim, do you have any comments or questions for any of the attorneys or presenters?
No, I don't.
Okay. So it looks like, Mr. Reed, the board would be interested to hear from you about, you know, if you want to, or we can hear from Attorney Keiberg, but, you know, what does it mean when you say that you reside there, or what is the extent of the rentals?
Sure, I spend many months a year there. Do I spend 181 days to make it my primary in a tax return? Not always. This year I was there all of March, all of April, all of May, all of June, most of August. I'll be there all next week. I spent Thanksgiving there, Christmas there, Easter there, July 4th there. So I use it, the vast majority of the time, is my personal use. Now, when I bought the property, I think you all know the property, it's a well-known property. It was famous for having large family gatherings just because of the size of it. That was nothing I invented. If my websites are a little exuberant, I apologize. My fiance did that. I'm happy to change them. But, you know, I think it's beautiful when a family reaches out. If I'm not using the property, if I have to go work somewhere on a business trip and someone says, you know, can I rent it? I have, you know, I'm a grandfather and I want to have my kids and my grandkids and use the property. I think that's beautiful. I think that's a beautiful part of the Nantucket zoning code. I think 2 building commissioners, Commissioner Dunn and Murphy, have affirmed the ancillary use of the tent. And for me, you know, it's always an ancillary use. I have never rented the property for an event, never. This year, there were a couple small micro weddings. They were both a whole week. They stayed there for a week. They were beautiful families, and they may have had a tent for a day or two. And my final point, and this goes to the Westmore differential, and someone I think said this, I think Marcus said it, I can have a tent for 9 days, 9 days out of 365 days. That's 2.4% of the days I can have a tent. I have never violated that covenant. I'm well aware of it. Mr. Guff is well aware of it. He bought the house next to me 2 years ago in 2018. So I know he's well aware of that covenant. If I did violate it, there's recourse in that restriction, in that deed restriction, to go back to land court. If he has proof that I violated that agreement, he can take me back to land court. This is the incorrect venue. You know, just on a personal note, briefly, you know, I've come to Nantucket my whole life. My uncle John Reed in Wisconsin, you know, was head of the Wisconsin Trust. He helped move the Sankaty Lighthouse. He was my mentor. Nantucket has always been a very special place for me. I have some of the best advisors on the island. Linda Williams, Arthur Reed, Richard Glidden does some of my personal work. Kevin Deneen does all my electrical. Mark Lombardi does all my landscaping. The property is kept to A+ standards. And it's been a joy to purchase the property and improve the property. I have not enlarged the property. The property has the same number of bedrooms, 15 bedrooms. I don't know if they're getting 40 rooms to unrelated parties. That's a specious argument. The people who rent the property are always families. That's the ultimate relationship. That's the ultimate residential use. So for me, maybe one day I'll have 6 kids and you know, I'll have 20 grandkids and I'll use the property all the time, but I'm not currently at that stage of my life. Again, it's an honor. And, you know, a local couple just reached out a few weeks ago, Justine Derry and Chris Bastani, and they just rented the property for a week for their wedding. And I just want to share a little bit about their email to me that they wrote after their email. They said they rented the property the first week of October. They said our time with Whales Watch was incredible. Getting married in a pandemic is not easy. It gave us a huge opportunity to have a whole family together. It's an unbelievable setting. It said all protocols were followed. The owner and the caretaker, social distancing, masks, abiding by the 10 o'clock noise ordinance. Amanda Ciamataro, who's my caretaker, keeps an eye on everything for me. I even hired the Coast Guard and off-duty police to stand in the driveway and make sure all protocols were followed. I take every precaution. This is not whatever Mr. Elliott was doing. I don't mean to disrespect him. I don't know the man too well. but I have improved the property. And the people, Ernie Strang just did the septic over. The best of the best on Nantucket have advised me on this. This is not some cowboy show on Tom Never's head. And so for me, I can't say it better than Justine said. I can't thank Michael enough for the plans. Had it not been for him and Whales Watch, we would not have been able to afford to make our wedding dreams possible this fall. That's the reason why I allow people to come to my personal home. This is my home where I celebrate almost every major holiday. But to have a property that beautiful sit empty. I mean, I love the winter more than the summer in Nantucket. Maybe I'm crazy. And I drive around the island and I see all these beautiful oceanfront houses dark because no one's here except in July and August. And I think that's a travesty. For me, if someone reaches out and wants to have a special family gathering at Whales Watch, I'm glad to try to accommodate them. And I just have to say, at a personal point of frustration, led by Mr. Guff, who we've had lunch, and he's a nice guy. I'm sure he'd say I was a nice guy. We just have a difference of opinion here. First they tried 2 citizens articles to change the zoning code. I had 40 local businesses, some of the best on the island, write letters saying reducing backyard weddings would have a drastic effect on the Nantucket economy. Florists, caterers, hair salons. It would be a horrible thing for Nantucket. Those weddings, Justine and Chris, they're not just going to go to the Wawanit for $100,000 or $200,000, and have a wedding there. They can't afford it. And at least half the weddings I have, that's the clientele I have. So for me, it's an honor to own the property. It's an honor to share it for a residential stay. I don't do 1 or 2 or 3 nights. I don't do that. They're almost always a week. I've tried to improve the property. And again, I don't see how anyone can say, when I'm already deed restricted to 9 days a year with a tent, how could that possibly be an unreasonable interference? I'll reference Judge Graham, which is the precedent that Mr. Kyborg. How could 9 out of 365 days, 2% of the year, how could that be an unreasonable interference with my neighbor? I don't understand it. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so from here, if no one on the board has any comments, I can only see a few people. So if anybody does, please speak up.
I have a question.
Okay, thank you, Ed.
Mr. Reed. I'm just not clear on this. Is the agreement you have with Mr. Guff for weddings or for tented events?
It was between Mr. Hoey and Mr. Elliott in 2001. It's 4 tents for a maximum of 9 calendar days. That's my deed restriction. And I've never violated it, Ed. I've never violated it. And technically I have 2 lots, so I should have 3 tents per lot, which would be 6 tents. So my restriction, my point is my deed restriction is already more restrictive than what is on Nantucket. So I'm already restricted to a mere 9 days, 2% of the year. So I think the argument and they tried the two
on the tents, but not on the events. It's just the tented events are restricted.
Eleanor, what page? Do you know what page? I was just looking for it. Do you know what page the agreement's on?
I'm just trying to get clear here. I mean, you can have an event any night of the year, but you can only have a tent. It's the tent that is restricted to four times or 9 days. Or is it an event?
I think the agreement had different language in the bylaw.
So
the agreement is either for
280
weddings or amplified music events.
285 is the page in the packet. I'm sorry, my sharing capabilities are messed
That's
up.
okay. That's okay. I just wanted to look back at it quickly.
Starts on 285 and goes to 290 for the content.
Thank you. I had it highlighted. I had the portion highlighted, but I just couldn't find the page.
Paragraph 2, page 2.
Thank you, Peter.
Well,
right. So no more than 4 tent permits no more than 4 wedding-related or other events involving the erection of tents or outdoor amplified music in any calendar year. But regardless of that, this agreement is a agreement between the parties. It doesn't have, it doesn't bind the town or the zoning board, but given that it is more restrictive than our zoning bylaw allows for, and there have not been violations of that we know of. I think that speaks to the integrity of the owner anyway, to not be violating that when, I mean, he agreed to it, but the zoning bylaw allows for more.
Well, Susan, the bylaw allows for more, and what I'm trying to determine or understand is it's the difference between the Westmore was supposedly or was intensity. If you can have a wedding with all the accoutrements except a tent on any one of these days, and if you're advertising as a wedding venue on any day, but no, my tent permit's used up this year, but you can still have 200 people there. I think that's an important distinction.
It is, but he's not doing that, Ed. That was what the Westmore was doing, and so Paul issued the cease and desist. Here, he's not doing that.
But that is happening.
No.
That is exactly what's happening.
Okay, excuse me, Mr. Guff, I have not recognized you, so please.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get to. I'm not saying it is or isn't happening because I don't personally know. I'm trying to understand what does happen there. So what happens when it's not a wedding night? It's just a regular rental. Is that the case? So there are
It's
4
not,
weddings?
and I'll give you some examples.
Okay, Mr. Guff, again, I have not recognized you. We're asking, Mr. Toole is asking Mr. Reed a question about when it is rented during those 9 to 10, or Kai, Peter, you can answer, during those times when the property is rented, but it is not a wedding or a tented event, what is going on? I think Mr. Reed answered the question when he was speaking.
Thank you. I have a very short answer.
Thank you.
In one of the letters that came in, I believe from Mr. Hoey, who's Mr. Guff's predecessor in title, in his letter, he says over the last 18 years, or 2001 to 2018, he saw 56 weddings. You do the math. That's not very many weddings per year. In fact, I think it's far less than 4. So no, it's not being used as a wedding factory in any way, shape, or form. It's 1/13 of the year, or 2% the way Mr. Reed calculates it when there are tents there. So
yeah.
So I think what Mr. Toole is asking is when it is not being you, when there's not a celebration of a wedding and there's not a tent, the property may be rented out. What is happening at those properties? Is it families coming to rent for the week? Is
family
it
gatherings,
vacation rentals?
family gatherings.
Yes, and
That's not exactly what I'm asking, Susan. What I'm asking
I'm sorry. Okay.
is when we all agree that there is an agreement that says you can have 4 tents. So therefore, of it 9 days a year total. So that's 4 events that have the tent. Yeah, okay. So that agreement's in place. What I'm asking is what happens on the other 10 weeks that Mr. Reed has said he rents it? Are those events? Is the catering truck rolling down the road? Just because you don't have a tent doesn't mean you can't get married, doesn't mean you can't have a caterer there. It doesn't mean any of the above. It simply means you don't have a tent. So is it used in those other weeks as a wedding venue?
No, and I'll reiterate, and then I'll defer to my client, but I'll reiterate, 56 weddings in 18 years.
Well, first of all, Peter, I think that was the something you dredged up from Peter Hoey's. I'm talking about current.
He just wrote that letter.
Okay. Let's let Mr. Reed answer the question then.
Yeah, and I personally handle this, so I know exactly who rents my personal home, and they are families with children. I have never rented Fagawi. I have never rented Wine Festival. I have never rented to a college, a bachelor party. These are families. Normally it's a grandfather with children and grandchildren, and because of the size of the property, it's attractive to them. That's who it is. And obviously long before my ownership, because of the views and the huge lawn, people do request to have a wedding there. But I personally prove who that is. I look them up on LinkedIn and I say hello. And I do this personally. I'm not some absentee guy living in California doing this. And I spend many months a year at the property. For me, you know, it's one way I can give back to Nantucket, because just because you may not have the money for a wedding at the Walnut, why can you not have a backyard wedding? I think it's beautiful. I get notes like Justine's all the time saying, thank you for letting us use this property. And they come for a week. It's not for the event. It's a family gathering, which is consistent with the zoning code. I review this with Linda Williams, Arthur Reed, Richard Glidden, Peter Kyberg. I review it with the best of the best, and I'm well aware of the deed restriction. My lease even has restrictions on amplified music, on number of days the tent can be erected. I'm perfectly within the zoning code and I do not violate it.
Does that answer your question, Ed, or? I think you're on mute, Ed.
Yeah, I got you. So sorry about that. Not really, because Mr. Reed said that on these other times that he's having these renters, there are weddings off.
No.
You just said it.
No, these are
a backyard wedding.
These are, first of all, there's never been a backyard wedding in July or August during my ownership. Even though I have the right to do that, I think the island's already too crowded in July and August. There's not been one. And that's one thing I do for the neighborhood in terms of, I don't allow a wedding there in July and August. So that's just a gesture of my goodwill. The weddings are always in the shoulder season, which is when the Nantucket economy needs the wedding. And I prove exactly who it is. There's a very famous Nantucket family who's getting married there next June. I don't think any of you would say no to them. He's a beloved figure in the sports community. So, you know, it's an honor to own the property. I run it first class with the best of the best vendors and lawyers. And I wish I could live in Nantucket all year. Hopefully I'll get there in my life. But I'm there for many months a year. Just this year, I was there all of March, April, May, June. And the neighbors, and Drew and I have had lunch, and Drew's a nice guy. The other neighbors who have written these long letters have never called me. They've never emailed me. They've never reached out to me. If they have a problem, I was there for so many months. My black SUV was parked in the driveway. Why would they just come talk to me? But they have time to draft citizens articles and hire lawyers, hire Boston lawyers. I'm sure Mr. Bailey's a good lawyer. I just don't think that kind of behavior should be rewarded. If it's a neighborly issue, come talk to me. I'm glad to work with you.
Okay, so moving on. I can't see. I guess I can try to go to gallery view. I can't see everyone. Eleanor, do we have the ability on this for people to, because there are so many people, I think, on this. I know there's Mr. Guff wanted to speak. And is there the ability for people to like raise their hand, like I've had in other meetings, so that we can get to everyone? And Linda, I see here, wants to speak.
I don't see a hand raising thing on this particular thing, but
it's under participants.
No, I'm looking.
I just don't think I have the ability. Okay, so
This is Ed Gregory.
I've had
my hand raised for the last 5 minutes.
Okay.
Oh, I see it now. I'm so sorry. There it is. Okay. So
So I'm gonna go to Dan Bailey first, and John's iPad. Who is that?
It's John Flannery. I'm a resident on the street here.
Okay, so I'm gonna go to Dan Bailey first. And then I know Linda Williams said she wanted to speak. So I'll go Dan Bailey, Linda Williams, and then how it's listed where I'm looking is Edward Gregory, Randy Ringer, and John Flannery. So that's the order I'm gonna go in, okay, guys? So
what about Mr. Guff?
Is that, unless, does anyone on the board have a question, Lisa?
Have I been struck from your list?
Yeah, what about?
Oh, no, sorry, I just didn't see you, sorry. And Mr. Guff.
Yeah, and I believe.
And Danielle.
And I believe Amy Baxter and
Okay.
Terry Eichler.
Okay, well, so there's a lot of people on this call. I only have 6 people that I can
Go
see.
into, Susan, if you go into
Yep.
participants and click on
I know, I'm
that.
looking at that now. I'm
Okay.
looking at the hands. So the only hands that I see raised are Dan Bailey, Edward Gregory, Randy Ringer, John Flannery, and Linda Williams. So I'm going to go to Dan, then Linda, and then I will go to Edward Gregory, Randy Ringer, John Flannery, and Mr. Guff, because I know he wants to speak. So if we can keep,
Madam
that.
Chairperson, I know that the local licensing board authority wants to be heard in this matter, and that would be Amy Baxter.
That's been brought to my attention. Yep. So I will.
And also Terry Eichler, who can speak to the comparison of the two properties, the Westmore Farms.
Okay. Well,
and
I'm going to
Eel
start.
Point.
Thank you. Like I said, please use the raise your hand icon, and I will scroll through that list. So right now I'm going to start with Attorney Bailey.
Okay, thank you. And you have covered most of what I wanted to say, which is that there are a number of my clients and the neighbors who are on this call and prepared to speak, and they can speak to the question that Mr. Toole was asking, which is what is going on there right now. So I don't have anything other than that. I do have some responses to some of the issues that were raised, but I'll wait until, we address those at the end as we normally do.
Okay, I'll circle back to you then. Okay, so next, I guess I will go to
me.
Yeah, I had said I would go to Linda. Okay, Linda, we'll hear from Linda Williams, and then we'll move on to the neighbors.
Just a point of clarification, I believe Mr. Reed actually votes on Nantucket. And he's part of the same kinds of people that actually spend only 6 months a year and vote here, and this is their residence. So let's just clear that up right off the bat. I have a lot of contact with this property. Danielle needs to go on mute. I have a lot of contact with this property, let alone the fact that I was on the zoning board and a zoning administrator all those years when Elliott came in with all those issues and the court case and everything else that's transpired since then. I also have the unique perspective of driving for Cranberry Transportation in my little free time for the last 4 years.
How to do that.
We drive for all these weddings. So I have been to Whales Watch, and I have been to Old Westmore Farm, into the Green Barn and the Red Barn, which I am actually now, just so you all know, moving to a residential lot out in South Shore Road, both of those barns. So it's going to be ending. Everybody's happy about that up there. The difference between the two is that the primary residence of the Old Westmore property was as an event. Families would not stay there. They would also use it for 1 or 2 days. I can't tell you for the weeks of May and June, primarily, and September and October, I was up there at least twice a weekend with several vans. And it was just strictly an event location. People stayed everywhere else because I know I had to pick them up from the White Elephant and the Wall-Winnet and all over the island to bring them up there and then take them out. It was rented solely as an event location. So its primary use was as an event location, and that's why they got into trouble, deservedly so. But that's ending now.
Okay.
Whales Watch is a primarily residential. That is the difference, Ed. One is mostly all commercial as a primary use. Whales Watch, because of the 3 houses, is a primarily residential use. Now, we all spoke against the proposed bylaw in front of the planning board back in January or February, and the planning board did not endorse that bylaw change because it would have affected people all over the island unnecessarily. You're not doing this in a vacuum. This came up when we restricted the tents, so I don't know, 10 years ago. They were targeting the Elliott property, and they, by unfortunately unintended consequences, impacted a lot of other people that rent their homes for a week and the family gets married there. This rental of the homes, like my uncle did it up on the cliff because he had a huge front yard at 64 Cliff. People would want to come there to get married because they could get a lot of people in the yard. They put a floor down. Sometimes there was a tent, sometimes not. But it wasn't business. It was people knew that they could rent the house, and it slept 14 people and they rented it. This goes on all over the island.
Linda, I want to hear what you have to say, but we have a lot of people who want to comment, and I believe that we only have until 5 o'clock. I believe. Eleanor, you can tell me if we got back on that. So
I'll cut to the chase.
I appreciate your comments. Let's try to wrap it up so I can move on. I've got a bunch of people's hands up.
Rental of properties by people for a week or 2 weeks or however long they rent it is going on all over this island and has been for 120, 30 years since whaling ended. What families do on these properties, they have garden parties, they have events, not an event. I think you're overusing the word event. I think it's gatherings of family, whether it's the 50th wedding anniversary, whether all the grandkids come here. This goes on all the time. The food truck issue this summer was done because people did not want to go shopping. I've spoken to the food truck guys, and I'm working with one right now. These food trucks showed up all over the island on these properties, not because of quote unquote events. They showed up because people did not want to go into town to eat in a restaurant in the middle of a street blocked off by Jersey barriers. So the food trucks would come out to Whales Watch. I'd run into them everywhere. That's what happened this summer because of the virus. So you're allowed to rent a house. It is not a commercial use to rent a house. That bylaw did not pass. I know there's very incarnations that people are trying to put forth, but that's did not pass.
Okay, thank you, Linda.
And they can continue to rent it and do what they need to do as a family who rents a house. This is not an event space.
Thank you. Okay, important points. Okay, I'm going to move on now. I see that we have, I'm going to listen to the neighbors. Again, I'm going to ask everyone, please try to keep your comments concise so that we can get through everyone, because I know we've got Danielle's waiting. Paul Murphy wants to respond as well. I've got Amy Baxter. So I would like to hear from both the commissioner and the licensing professional. So I'm going to start with you, Mr. Gregory. He's on the phone. Okay. Randy Ringer.
Yeah.
This is Ed Gregory.
Oh, hey, Ed, I skipped over to you to Randy Ringer, so you'll come up next.
You know what I think it'd be better, it would be, Susan, is if the neighbors talked first and then I spoke, because I'm the president of the Tom and Evers Civic Association. So I think it'd be better if they set it up first.
Okay, so then we'll go back to Mr. Gregory.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
A couple of things. I'll be as brief as I can be. Winoma Way is a very quiet place normally, and it's remote. So it's difficult, I think, for people who don't abut the Reed property to appreciate just what it's become. The notion that it's anything but commercial is laugh out loud. And I would ask any of you to come by when Mr. Reed has renters there, because he spoke earlier. He said 40 rooms. He doesn't have 40 rooms. He has room for 40 people, which he often has there. Furthermore, he said he hasn't changed the property. He just installed a swimming pool on his front lawn. The people congregate around it. It's their right to do so, but there are tens of them, sometimes 20. Are they weddings? I don't know. Are they the day before a wedding? Are they the day before a tent goes up? They seem to go on for days at a time. There are beer cans strewn all over the place. There are cops on the road. The Coast Guard has been hired. Just listening to the way he talks about the property, it ought to be obvious that he thinks of it himself as a commercial venture. I respect anyone's altruism, but the notion that he is running a place there just to be a service to fellow citizens of Nantucket is completely disingenuous. And as far as no one ever having reached out to him, I walked over and had a conversation with him on his front lawn while he was sharing a beer with his contractors who were building the pool. And I asked him, could he please mitigate the amount of weddings he's throwing here and stop running a motel? I would ask any of you, anyone on this call, to take a ride by one day, not on a Thursday afternoon, not on a quiet Wednesday in November, but during the summer when he's having events there. And as far as families are concerned, it's very interesting to see families comprised of maybe 30 or 40 20-something-year-olds congregating on the balconies on the front the houses, which look like a hotel, when it's fully lit up at night, like a commercial space, more like a bar in town. The lights stay on all night, the music goes all night. It's not always the DJ music, but the whole character, tenor, feel of the place is like a commercial hotel. And I respect everybody on the board, but unless you see it, it's very, very difficult to appreciate. So if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, and swims like a duck, it's a duck. Furthermore, this 21-year-old agreement between former owners of the property and Mr. Elliott was something that I've never discussed with anyone when I bought my property 10 years ago. Once Mr. Reed bought his property, the whole tenor of it changed. It's much, much, much busier than you can imagine. Furthermore, it's a dirt road and a gravel road. There are cars parked up and down our street. There are yoga or other exercise programs going on the lawn. There are a whole myriad of other activities which suggest that it's being commercially rented for other business use. And there are constantly catering trucks and other commercial enterprises entering and leaving the property. So I really have to ask you all, we are homeowners. We're not living across the street from the Walnut or living across the street from the White Elephant. We're living across the street from something that is in every instance a hotel disguised as a summer rental property. And I resent the notion that Mr. Reed refers to all the famous people in town, all the well-known connections he has, and the famous sports guy who's going to rent the place next year, as if that gives him more right to peace and quietude than the surrounding neighbors. Thank you very much. If I can answer any questions, I'm happy to do so. Let's talk about intent, please. It's very important. And it has ruined many a summer afternoon and weekend at my residence. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gregory. Okay, so I will move on to Mr. Flannery.
Thank you. I would, am the next door neighbor of Ed Gregory, just to put that in context, and I live on Winoma Way. And I would just pick up on what Ed said, which is, I think of this issue ultimately as a neighbor, and I've lived in this neighborhood for almost 25 years. I've lived in this present home for 10 years. Really in a context of a spirit and a letter. So we've spent a lot of time today discussing the letter of the law and this or that. You know, I understand that's always part of these discussions. But there's also a spirit to it that I think Ed is getting at, which is fundamentally, this is a residential neighborhood. This is what we all bought into. We're all respectful of each other. That's the environment that we bought into. And this is antithetical to the notion that you're living respectfully with your neighbors. So you guys have heard it all, but it's repeated, loud music, people, drunk all over the place, cleaning up in the morning, walking by with my dogs. Mr. Reed has lived here apparently for several years. I've never met him. I walk past his house every day, twice a day for the last 6 months. So that is really, I would ask you to go back at the end of the day and say, we're not arguing, in a certain way, 9 days, 4 days, 7 days. We're arguing about there's a commercial business operating in a residential neighborhood. And it's fundamentally a binary issue, in our opinions. And it's a notorious issue. If you ask policemen, if you ask firemen, if you ask, I just found out the other day, we had our power out here and the National Grid person said, well, the problem's somewhere between the wedding house and your house. People refer to this house routinely as a wedding house in a commercial venue. And it's sitting right in the middle of a quiet, sleepy neighborhood. And if this is permitted, I don't see intellectually what the limit would be to any commercial business in a neighborhood like this. And then lastly, just say, this notion, again, I'm not a lawyer, but this notion that 2 or 3 parties in a neighborhood of, many more homes could agree to something 20 years ago, and I'm somehow obligated to live by that. It's not on my deed. It was never disclosed to me. I don't understand in any logical way how a private agreement 20 years ago between citizens would bind me in any way. And then the last comment I would just make is, again, spirit is important here, is this whole comment around intensity, I think, is in the eye of the beholder. If you live here, if you're here in the summer and every single weekend, frankly, every single day practically, party after party after party after party, that's our reality. So it's quite easy to sit and look at the books and records somewhere and say, hey, it's 365 days. But that's not the reality of the people who live here. So I appreciate you taking the time. I know it's been a long afternoon for everybody, but I have never been involved in a situation like this. I've never felt the need to speak to a board like this. And I think I have a very balanced view of what crosses the line. And in my opinion, this is way across the line. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Flannery. Next, I have Drew Guth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A lot's been thrown around about the activities at Whales Watch, and you've heard from Mr. Reed, but you've also now heard from a few neighbors who have refuted a lot of what Mr. Reed has said. And some of the questions have been around the intensity and what's going on. First, I'd like to say, the question really isn't, is it 2 parties, 4 parties, 3 weddings, 17 weddings? Is a commercial operation running in a residential district and a residential zone? Number one. Number two is, but even if we want to talk about what has changed, what's different, and scale and scope, even during COVID, I can tell you the week of September 12th alone, there were 6 events in 8 days, whether it's a wedding or whether it's not. And I can go to and I know the dates because I keep a record. September 12th, big tourist bus that I had to sit behind the night of my wife's birthday, as a matter of fact. September 15th, loud music, jazz music. September 16th, island kitchen, cars parked, drones outside our windows flying around, amplified music, hooting and hollering, people running around. September 17th, bagpipes. Yes, COVID health violation, people not wearing masks close to each other, blowing out, whatever you blow out of a bagpipe. I called the police that night. September 18th, major amplified music again. The health inspector was there. September 19th, huge tent. So that's your tent night. And so then the question is, okay, there's a tent. But when someone says, I only have 4 tents, I just described to you 6 events in 1 week. And any week can then have any number. You could have 6 in a week. So there's 24 right there. So the Bourne case, the Bourne decision was 24 events, 21 weddings, and 3 clam bakes in 15 years. Here you can have 25 in 1 year. So the question about whether it's 3, 17, 24, 48, I think is not the relevant question, given now the precedent that the town is going to have to live by, either now or at some point in the future. The question is, if you rent your place out, take money, and I know these are beautiful people, beautiful grandfathers, beautiful football star celebrities, are those beautiful people paying Mr. Reed as a business? And is he running it as a business? It's a commercial activity in a residential neighborhood. That, I think, is the key question that's being asked. The other thing is we live in Lug 3. Lug 3 it's the most restrictive residential zone. And, I've had friends try to find where we live here. It's pretty remote. And they've gone to Google Maps. There's a hotel icon on Whales Watch on Google Maps. And that just tells you that it's being advertised as a hotel. And so, again, the Bourne decision is about if you can have commercial activities, not size or scope and arguing it. In fact, we know the size and scope in Bourne was far, far less than here. The question is whether or not that is a commercial activity at all, and whether or not that's allowed. The point about people on the island and doing it for them, there are 53 different venues where one can have legitimate licensed weddings and events on the island of Nantucket. This is not a commercially zoned area. The location does not pay liquor license fees, inspection fees. They don't pay commercial taxes. So it's flying under the radar. If you sleep 40 and you can have an event for 400 people, that would put, I can't find many hotels on the island that would be bigger than that. White Elephant, Nantucket Hotel, Summer House, very, very few can take 400 people at a time. So you put 400 people in a small residential quiet neighborhood, you're exploding it when you do it. And so it's not just 4 times, it's longer than that. Those people who can supply vendor relationships to Mr. Reed, those people can and will and would work. You're not truncating their livelihood in any way. They would work at other hotel venues and they would work at other weddings. So you're not taking the bread out of anybody's mouth who's a supplier to any of these services. 20-year-ago agreements, that's not the law of the land anymore. The Bourne decision is the law of the land. 20 years ago, the internet wasn't invented yet. So everything has changed. Jack Dunn was the building commissioner. I'm not sure any of us would agree that that's a great paragon example of town governance and administration. So what happened back then is really quite a different picture from the way people should look at it, adjudicate it today. Did I know that weddings take place when I bought the Hoey property? Absolutely. I bought it because Mr. Reed wanted to buy it and expand his wedding business. Now imagine something that's already the size that we've discussed today, and you've heard from Mr. Reed, but you've also heard from the others. I bought it out of self-defense to protect my own privacy. Why? Because Mr. Murphy and building commissioner and zoning people cannot act quickly enough to stop Mr. Reed from buying it and turning 3 houses into 5 houses. Mr. Gregory had to buy the property next to him. Why? Because Mr. Reed wanted to expand it. That is an ever expanding business. We should not have to spend our own money to defend our right to peace and privacy. That is the job of people who administer and run the zoning in the town of Nantucket. So was I forced to buy it? Did I willingly buy it? I did, because otherwise I would have an entirely major hotel operation running next door to me.
Okay. I'd like you to, can we try to
Wrap it
this
up?
Yeah, so I can move on to the next.
Please do.
Okay. So thank you for your comments. And next on the list, I have Mr. Ringer.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Randy Ringer. I'm the president of the Tom Nevers Civic Association. And our association represents about 600 property owners in the Tom Nevers area. In 2008, we developed an area plan with the help of the Nantucket Planning and Economic Development Commission. And on that working group, we had a group it was a cross section of people within Tom Nevers East, Tom Nevers West, Tom Nevers South, Wigwam, and Matagasham, plus 2 members from the Nantucket Commission. The plan was developed through a series of focus groups, in-person interviews, and surveys that were sent to all of the property owners. We had over a 40% response rate to the survey, which is unusually high for this kind of a survey. So we believe that this plan truly reflects the desires of the overwhelming majority of the property owners in Tom Nevers, And if you would like to see it, that is on our website, tomnevers.org. The major takeaways from the area plan as it relates to the issue before us today are: 1, 76.3% of respondents said the number one factor that residents liked best about living in Tom Nevers was its peace, quiet, and privacy. Number 2, 98.4% of residents indicated that they, quote, love the Tom Nevers area as it exists today, unquote, strongly indicating that major changes are not desired. Third, there was general support for accommodating small home based businesses, provided that they do not disturb the neighborhood with disruption to peace, beauty, and tranquility. The survey found that many year-round and seasonal residents are self-employed and operate out of their homes. Most are good neighbors, but a few are proving disruptive, contributing noise, odors, extra traffic, and visual eye pollution. These were all words that came out of the survey. Respondents felt that as home businesses grew, they outgrew the residential setting and should be moved to commercially zoned areas. So based on the number of complaints that I have personally received regarding whale watch, I would conclude that this business, perhaps unwittingly, does not respect the desires of the overwhelming majority of Tom Nevers residents, which is to maintain an area that covets peace, quiet, and privacy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna go to Paul Murphy's been waiting for a while to make a comment. Paul, are you still here? Okay. Then I'm going to go to Amy Baxter.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm the licensing administrator for the town, for those that don't know me, and was asked to take a look at this situation and come at it from a licensing perspective. And I want to be clear that I'm not here at all to try to define commercial as far as zoning, any zoning regulations. I operate solely under MGL 138, Chapter 250, and the ABCC and Select Board. So my comments are based on licensing regulations. Taking a look at this, and this is something we've reviewed with the state as recently as 2 weeks ago. When you're a high-risk community in the COVID land, you get a lot of attention from the state. This is one area we were concerned about, just homes in general and events of that sort. The rental of the home alone would make it subject to licensing and liquor laws. The advertisement that we've reviewed quite a bit, page 443, that we had looked at prior to, I mean, it is absolutely positively would place it in the world of licensing and liquor laws. You know, a couple things in it. I think the word, you know, they mentioned that they're private owners and operators. I think the word private is overused sometimes in this genre because it's looked at as some sort of shield to these rules and regulations. It is not. 99.9% of businesses are private owners and private property. That does not preclude you from needing licensing. It also says that they would never cancel an event unless your public gathering, again, was explicitly made illegal. So a lot of this language, I understand maybe you were excited in your wording of this, but a licensed facility can be brought up on violations for an advertisement alone. So that brought us a great concern. It's something we've talked about for a long time. I understand this has been going on for years and years, but we've worked hard over the past couple of years to bring a lot of this into compliance. And this is one area that we're going to be looking at, regardless, obviously, of this situation. However, they would be required to follow liquor laws. A reason may be that while Winnet and others are more expensive, and I would like to have more reasonable opportunities for folks to get married here, but they have to follow liquor laws. They must purchase all their alcohol from a wholesaler, and then obviously the sale to the client in a lot of these situations, they look at both of those options and may go for this home because, hey, they can buy the liquor at Costco and bring it over, and there's no IDing, there's no insurance, there's no sorts of regulations that everyone else must follow.
So
And that's-
Amy, can I just ask a question? So what raises it to the level of triggering your concern for needing licenses?
First of all, and again, this is in consultation with Ralph Sacramone, who's the executive director of the state liquor agency. The rental of the home alone as a event venue alone can trigger that. The
So
advertising.
is that true for anyone on Nantucket who rents their home? They run the risk of violating a licensing if they are hosting a wedding at their home?
Correct. And there's
so that's a separate, but that's a separate issue from whether it's commercial, or what you're saying is whether it's a commercial use or a residential use. If you are renting your home to host a wedding for someone who's not in your family, or maybe even is in your family, you need to contact your office to make sure that they're following along with whatever pouring license or entertainment license or whatever may be needed for the town.
Correct. And there's various layers here, and I'm not trying to indict past behaviors or anything of that sort, but just I was asked to look at this from our perspective. And it's something we've certainly have known about and has come very much on the radar in the world of COVID and will be moving forward.
So from your perspective, I would say this is an opportunity for Mr. Reed to maybe learn something, and that he should be reaching out to your office to figure out what steps he may need to do, regardless of where this turns out. He should be in contact with you.
Yes, and we will be in contact as well. And for all properties, we're working on establishing this as a policy and procedure moving forward to make sure it's clear, because it has exploded.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
That's a quick question just to learn something from Amy. So Amy, if someone reaches out like Chris Pastani and Justine Derry and says, we want to have a 25-person micro wedding, and they're just going to show up with some wine and beer, they have to have a license?
So Mr. Reed, like, that is a great question, but that's for you and Amy to discuss off call. So I'm going to move back, but it is a good question, but I think you should reach out to her office tomorrow and figure that out. Okay. So Paul Murphy, I saw you had your hand up. Did you have a comment to make?
Yeah, thank you. Just quickly, Susan. So, I just wanted to point out that the property meets the definition of owner occupied in our bylaw. Mr. Reed's represented that he's there several months out of the year. You only have to be there 3 months to meet the definition of owner occupied. And I also did a search of police calls to the properties for the last 2 years. And I just wanted to point out, I have that analysis. One Reed's Way, there were 3 calls for noise complaints in 2020, 0 calls in 2019. 3 Reed's Way, there were 0 calls in the past 2 years. So I just wanted to make the board aware of those 2 things. And that's really all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Does the board, before I go, there's another, I think, neighbor who has their hand up. Is there anyone on the board who has a question for anyone who's spoken? Or any questions in general? No. Okay.
I have a quick question, Susan.
Okay, Ed.
For Paul. Paul, so 3 months makes you an owner occupant. I get it. What constitutes, I guess, for lack of a better term, proof of that 3 months? Just, is there any, or do you just, go ahead.
I mean, somebody's testimony, that's all. I don't have the ability to make any other determinations other than what somebody represents, and I take it for face value.
Fair enough. Just asking.
Yeah.
No, it's a good question.
And that's been the policy of this board for many years. I know that we take our applicants and our we take people at face value for what they tell us. So we try to anyway. I'm going to move on to, I hope if I don't pronounce this wrong, but Terry Eichler has her hand up, or his hand up. Terry, are you still with us? Okay. Okay, So I don't see, I'm just scrolling through to see if I see that person still here. I see they're here, but their video's off and they're muted. So
Can
I
you
will.
hear me now?
Oh, yes, I can.
Sorry, and you did.
That's okay.
You pronounced my name correctly, which is not
Okay.
easy. Thank you and good afternoon to everyone. My name is Terry Eichler, and I reside at 11 Old Westmore Farm Road.
Oh, okay, Terry, hold on. So you are the neighbor for Westmore Farms?
Correct.
So I'm going to let you speak a little bit, but I don't, you know, it was already determined that Westmore Farms was determined to be a commercial use, and that had to do with some criteria that, from what the building commissioner tells me or tells us today, the intensity and the fact that people weren't even staying there, they were just coming on site for events and going. So I don't, that's already been determined, and I don't want to spend too much time hearing about what went on there. So I guess you can give us maybe an overview, but I'm just going to give you like a minute, okay?
Okay, well, I would start then by clarifying that plenty of people stayed at number 6 and number 8 Old Westmore Farm Road. That is completely inaccurate. There were weddings and families and events and corporate with the Nantucket project. People stayed on that property. It has a multitude of bedrooms, and it was maxed to the limit. I have been in this neighborhood. We bought our property in 2007. We've been in this house for 10 years, and that property has constantly been packed with people staying there. So that is an inaccurate testimony. And if I only have 1 minute, that's one point I would like to clarify. The other brief point I'd like to make, people need to understand that whether there's a tent or not a tent, whether there's families or guests, people make noise. I have walked the walk of what these neighbors are telling you, and so have my neighbors. It was so highly disruptive and dangerous to the public health and safety of our neighborhood that we spent years trying to work with Mr. Piles. You can go through the records and see how many times the police were called, how many times the police had to come over here. The similarities between what is going on in Tom Nevers and what went on in my neighborhood are almost identical. And so people did and stayed there. They would have rehearsal dinners. They would have welcome drinks. They would have brunches. It's not just about a wedding. It's about the events. And there are events around a wedding. And when they set up a tent, they don't set the tent up the day of the wedding. They set the tent up usually on Wednesday. We would be inundated with trucks. And we've had all the other complaints that the neighbors in Tom Nevers have mentioned, from drunk people, Uber drivers, taxi drivers, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Elderly neighbors of mine were awakened with foul language and people banging on their doors.
Again, but these are so I appreciate I appreciate this, but this is specific to that property. So I appreciate the intensity of what was going on over there, and I thank you for your testimony. But I'm gonna move on and limit it to the property that we're actually talking about now.
Okay, as long as I would just like to finish by saying that the record's clear. People stayed there. There are multiple buildings, and they stayed on the property. They didn't just come in. The guests came in, but plenty of people stayed there. Wedding parties stayed there. Families stayed there. So there were a lot of people.
Okay, thank you so much. So I still see some hands up, and I'm not sure if these people are still intending to talk or just did not take their hands down after they finished, or if there's some people did take their hands off. Let's see. Peter Kyberg, do you have anything else that you wanted to say before I go to see if Dan Bailey or Danielle have anything they want to say?
I would just very quickly like to add that there are all kinds of weddings that happen in Lug 2, Lug 3, and Lug 1 zones. That is a common occurrence across Nantucket and always has been. Thank you.
Okay. Dan Bailey, do you still have your hand up?
I do.
Okay.
I did take it down, but I just put it back up.
Okay.
Just very quickly, a couple of things. First of all, I know Westmore Farms is a somewhat different situation, but I think I have some information that bears on some of the questions about how is it different. I have a letter to your board dated February 21, 2020 from Glenn Wood at Rubin and Rudman, who is representing Mr. Piles. And that letter says that Westmore Farms uses the property primarily for residential purposes and also rents out the property for private purposes, which include family vacation rentals for weekly summer use, wedding events, business events. John Piles and his family use and occupy the property for year-round personal use. So based on this letter, there doesn't seem to be any distinction between Mr. Piles' use of Westmore and Mr. Reed's use of Wales Watch. A couple of other things I'd like to mention, Mr. Kyberg, and these are, I don't think the board's going to dwell on these because these are legal issues and they're really not within the board's domain, but I'm going to I can't help it. I'm a lawyer. Mr. Kyberg mentioned that, the prior decisions here are res judicata, which means that the matter has already been decided. We've looked at the record. We don't agree. There was never a final judgment in that case. Also, as far as we can tell, the Zoning Board of Appeals never rendered a decision. It was a constructive approval of the abutters' complaints regarding weddings that was reversed in Superior Court. We talked about the agreement, the contract. I have 6 different clients. There's only one of those clients who is subject to that agreement. That's a red herring. The other thing about that agreement is that people can go and make any private agreement they want, but that doesn't have any bearing on zoning compliance. Thank you.
I just want to clarify, Dan, what you said about the zoning board not making decision. The zoning board did support the decision, but from the court document,
They filed it late, Susan. They
right,
agreed.
that's what I was going to say. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Yes, that's what I was going to say, that it was a constructive grant because they did not file. So it wasn't that the zoning board didn't rule. They ruled, and on a technicality of not filing it in time, a constructive grant was issued. So, and the court said the issuance of the constructive grant rests on a legally untenable ground and as such must be annulled. So that's that. So that differentiates that. But let's, I'm sorry, who's trying to speak?
Jim, I just have a follow-up on that. So we don't have a copy of that decision or the one that was remanded. The one that was remanded back, Eleanor?
There's a copy of the decision. Oh, you mean the ZBA decision?
Yeah, I don't understand why there was not a ZBA written decision on this. I'd like to know how the ZBA, more than what they voted for.
Hey guys, sorry to interrupt. This is Mark from NCTV.
Yeah.
We got over a little bit, so we have another meeting that's going to start shortly. So we're going to have to wrap it up in a couple minutes, but if you guys want to resume next week, we can definitely schedule that for you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so.
Peter, do you know if there was a written decision?
They actually put the decision into writing. They did, but it wasn't filed in time, and I've not been able to find it.
Okay.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Linda Williams, are you still on?
But when it was remanded, when it was just, okay.
Sure, sorry, Jim.
When it was remanded, was there not another ZBA decision on this that we don't have a record of?
It wasn't remanded. The Superior Court said that Elliott can do whatever the bylaw allowed. And then another lawsuit, duplicative lawsuit, was filed in the land court, and the whole thing was going to go around again. And then the neighbors made a deed restriction on those properties.
Correct. And if I could add quickly, Judge Graham in his decision quoted Commissioner Dunn and quoted the head of the ZBA supporting Commissioner Dunn in his decision. So the ZBA's written opinion is in Judd Graham's opinion.
It was actually the administrator, but I
Right, it
know
was
what you're
Linda.
saying. Yeah, I know
Linda.
what you're saying. So,
Yeah, I read that.
so if we have to, guys, if we have to wrap up in a few minutes, I don't want to make it as a hasty decision on this one. We could continue to next month, or we could, I think we've talked about a lot of issues. I think a lot of them are outside the question, which is, do we uphold or strike down the building commissioner's finding that this was not a commercial use? I think definitely through this process, we've learned that, and Mr. Reed has learned that regardless of whether it's commercial or residential, there are licensing and permitting another avenue that he needs to reach out to at the town that may or may not have been enforced before. But that's outside our scope. The thing that I just want us to be careful about is, as Mr. Bailey said earlier, that, you know, when I brought up the point about Nantucket being a place where, you know, people rent out their homes, hopefully for 8 to 10 weeks. Some people get the shoulder season as well, and people move into their garage apartments. They pay their mortgage this way. They do a lot of things. We allow this as a residential use. Weddings in some areas when it is a part of that that rental. If people can host a wedding at their house. My concern is that by saying that this is a commercial use, we're going against what our building commissioner says, which I'm not super psyched to do. And as Dan Bailey suggested, that we will probably have to address this later on for rentals of residential at some point. And I do not want to speed that process along for people. I think that Nantucket has had a long history of allowing rentals, even though there are no commercial uses in a lot of zoning districts. We allow for people to rent their homes on a weekly basis or on a weekend basis, or however they want to do it. And I would say that some of those people do run it closer to a business than just a mom, you know, they depend on it for the year, for income. So that said, if there are no other comments from the board, I would probably like to see either a motion to uphold, I think, Eleanor, what do we do? A motion to uphold the building commissioner's decision, because we do it in the affirmative?
You would do, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, you either uphold or deny the appeals, the way we have typically done it.
Okay, so a positive vote would uphold the appeal, which would then determine that it's a commercial use.
That would reverse the building inspector's decision, correct?
Okay. The alternative is that if people feel that we need to have more discussion on this, that we continue until November 12th. How does the board feel on that one?
I feel a little bit rushed at the last minute trying to make a decision without discussing it as a board. So I would make a motion to continue.
I would support that motion.
Okay, I think that makes sense, because I don't want to make a decision just because the TV time is going to run out, or the Zoom time or whatever.
I think this is an important question and deserves a lot of thought and discussion.
Yeah, it has a lot of ramifications, I think, that go beyond this property. And Lisa and Ed and myself, I think we're at the planning board meetings when the citizens articles were presented, and that discussion, you know, is present in my mind when we're going through this. But yeah, I do think it's an important thing we need to discuss. So the motion, who made the motion to continue?
I did.
And Karam, you seconded?
Correct.
Okay, so motion has been made and seconded. I will do roll call for all those in favor. Lisa Botticelli?
Aye.
Ed Toole?
Aye.
Michael O'Mara?
He logged off.
Oh, he did? Okay, sorry. Karam Kasayatak?
Aye.
Jim Mondani?
Aye.
And myself. That makes 5, right? Aye. Lisa, Ed, Michael, Karam. 1, 2, 3. Oh, actually, maybe I did I do 6?
I lost track. You didn't have, you don't
I
have
think
Mark.
maybe
Yeah, you don't have Mark and you don't have Michael
Jeff.
present, so.
But I think I did my. Okay.
You did 5. You did 5.
Okay. Okay. All right, because Michael logged off. Okay, sorry. Okay, so so this matter is continued until our next regularly scheduled zoning board of appeals meeting on November 12th.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam
Okay.
Chair.
Thank you
Thanks,
very much.
everybody.
Can I make a motion to adjourn?
Make that motion.
Okay, so.
Second that.
Okay, so all those in favor of adjourning, Lisa,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Karam,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
and Jim.
Aye.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks. All right, see you later.
Bye.